right, here we are. Everything's up. Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 24th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. Today we're going to continue our topic on homebrew items, how we like to balance them, and just kind of what we do when we're kind of doing these homebrew reviews. We're going to talk a little bit more towards the end after we do our first couple reviews on just our thought process on, how we go about balancing it, either for High Point or for Kage's Cineverse, and just our ideas of what balancing means in terms of, what do we consider as OP, what do we consider is balanced for the player, balanced for mechanics. But yeah, we're just going to go over a lot of topics like that. We have a couple items to review up front. One sent from Cosmic is one of our viewers. He submitted something for us to review today. I have my own item that I've been finalizing, so I'm going to present that. We're just going to chit-chat about that one. And then we also have another item to just chit-chat about that I went over last week that Kage wasn't here for. And then, yeah, we'll just kind of roll from these conversations right into how we approach balancing and just kind of our thoughts on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get these items pulled up here and kind of let Kage say hello to everybody.
What is happening, party people? It is good to be back. Very nice. I'm excited. Cosmic, I've heard a little bit about the first 10 out of 10. The first 10 out of 10. This is very exciting. I like it.
Actually, so technically, apparently, we just found out it is the second.
That's right.
The first 10 out of 10.
We'll say it's the first 10 out of 10
viewer submitted. Yes. It is the first 10 out of 10 the viewer has submitted. The first official 10 out of 10 that I gave was the Kage the Bearded one. I believe.
No, that was the anime.
Oh, the anime swordsman class. That's right. We just went over those. So yeah, the anime swordsman class is officially the first 10 out of 10 I gave, but that was for a lot of other reasons I actually didn't go over in that episode. I kind of talked to Kage a little bit off screen. We were chit-chatting about that. There's reasons that go beyond the class's build that I gave it a 10 out of 10 because it essentially inspired me and helped me finalize some Game Plus mechanics that I was working on. And I didn't really want to go over that in the stream itself because I was really just trying to understand how I wanted to do reviews and not go off into what I'm doing actively with my realm. So I didn't really go into more detail about why that was a 10 out of 10, but it's because it helped me progress, and I'm going to take that and use that. But yes, it's officially from a user-submitted one, Cosmic is the first to get a 10 out of 10 on his feat, double or nothing. So we'll probably go over that one first. So I did talk to Kage before stream about it. So he is relatively aware of it, but I think he'll be able to kind of go over some of his thoughts and opinions on it, because I did explain it to him that it is a feat that you will have designed for a higher level gameplay, so this is kind of for your level 12 and beyond feat, where it will allow, when casting any attack spell that can target a single creature, this feat will essentially make that a spell DC save for the target. Mm-hmm. If they succeed, instead of taking half damage, they will take no damage. And if they fail, instead of taking full damage, they will take double damage.
Yep.
And there are some caveats there where if it's a default Arcana, if there's no other clear stat.
Right.
And if the spell already has a DC save, you just use that save, and all we're changing is the end result, that it's a half damage on a save, full damage on a fail. It's just now double or nothing. So we did go over that. I loved it as it was. I did not need to change anything fundamental about it conceptually, which is why it got a 10 out of 10. I also really, really liked it because I do want to play with it. I do want to have it as something available for my players. And the only thing I did to adapt it to my realm, I didn't change anything fundamentally about how it was described or how it works based on what Cosmic said. But the only thing I did to it was I put limitations on when and where it could be applied. So essentially how I would give it to my players is all I did. And mine were, I limited it to Warlocks because it would make more sense that that's a deal specific with their patron for the ability to do that. Clerics of the god of gambling, basically the god of trickery and gambling.
Right.
That makes perfect sense because being able to have a double or nothing effect would fall right in line with that kind of deity. And artificers specifically, because I like the idea that if my mindset for this is if an artificer has an item that is able to cast a spell, an attack spell that follows all of these, whether it's like, let's say, a wand that has 2 charges of Ray of Enfeeblement, I think, or not Ray of Enfeeblement, 2 charges of Hellish Rebuke. Let's just say you have a wand that has like Hellish Rebuke. The artificer would be able to, at the time of casting, my idea is that they would imbue it, or they would like infuse it with their arcane abilities to inflict the double or nothing effect on the time of casting. So those are kind of the reasons why I want. Those are why there might be more, but those were the first 3.
I just came up with a question that. So what it basically says is it doubles the damage. So does it double the damage like a crit?
You mean double max?
Or does it do it kind of like vulnerability? What I mean is, so a lot of the times when you get a crit, you roll double the dice.
Right.
And you see what happens.
See, I don't like that personally.
And others,
I don't like double dice rolls. Because to me...
For crits, no.
Yeah, for me, whenever I hear double damage, I hear double the damage rolled. So you roll your normal damage and you double that. I don't like the idea of doubling the dice rolled unless it's for certain mechanics, because it doesn't make sense, right? If my sword does a certain amount of damage and you're having me double it because I hit a vital organ... giving me 2 d8s when I can still roll a 2 makes no sense. Giving me a 2 because I rolled a 1 makes sense, but also giving me a 6 because I rolled a 5 and a 1 doesn't make any sense. Giving me a 12 because I rolled a 6 makes more, or
I hear where you go.
So that's my process. So the way I would read this as double or nothing. So here's my concept of it. Double or nothing if it is an always active passive feat, because I think Cosmic, we never decided that yet on whether or not this was a passive or a choice. If it's a feat that you take and now all spells are inflicted by this, like it's a passive, it just always happens. I would say it should be double the damage roll. If this is a choice, which means that at the time of casting, you choose whether or not you're going to do double or nothing. I would almost go as far as to say it's double max, or like basically double full or nothing. Because you're basically playing the field.
Yeah.
I would almost be okay in basically, but that's also very, very OP to basically...
It's powerful, but again, depending upon how often you let the person do that, because if you're gonna say you have to choose to activate it, then there's probably a limit to how much you can do it.
Right.
And that's so if there's like, if you're giving them like your proficiency moderate amount of times, like that's not a whole lot.
Sure.
At max, it's gonna be 5? So doing that 5 times a day before a long rest and having it max damage.
Well, and even so, the max you can do it is however many spells you're able to memorize that day. Like however many spells you can have, however many spell slots, or whatever your magic preference is. You really can only do it to however many spells you can cast.
Unless you got cantrips, because cantrips...
And cantrips would be fantastic. See, that's another thing where if it's one of those things where it may, because you can do it with cantrips, maybe it's best to do double damage rolled instead of double full, because then cantrips would basically make every cantrip OP.
But that's if it would be every cantrip if
they're attack cantrips.
If it's always active. But if you're choosing when it's active.
But at that point, you would always choose a cantrip. Like, I think at that point, you would just be like, yeah, cantrips, all my cantrips are always going to be double or nothing.
Unless it's limited. Unless you can only do it proficiency mod. Then you want to make sure it's a big spell. Like, if I cast Disintegrate, or if I cast something huge, that's the kind of shit that I want. I want to do big boy damage with this double or nothing. Like, if I'm going to double something, it's got to be worth it. Especially if I can only use 5 a day. So, like, if that's what we're going to do. But again, so, like, knowing whether it's, like, straight up passive or not, I think that will... did he reply to that?
Let's see. He says that he had a D&D session earlier today, and it was on the darker side. In fact, we all had those.
Right.
And then, so he says, it'd be like a weakness. If you roll 30 damage, double or nothing would make it 60. And since it's based on as saving throws, it technically can't crit. Okay. And that's the other thing, too.
Oh, that was the other question, is does the saving throw replace the attack roll? Because if you can use this on anything so if I'm casting a cantrip of Firebolt, traditionally that has an attack roll to it.
Correct.
Do I roll my attack roll, has to hit, and then you roll a saving throw to do double or nothing? Or are we replacing the attack roll with double or nothing?
I would say if the spell, my ruling would be if the spell already has an attack roll, you still have to do the attack roll. Like, you can't, it doesn't make the spell auto hit, because that to me means it auto hits, and then it's just their save on whether it misses or doesn't do damage.
We'll see.
But to me, I would still say if the spell comes with it, then
that is the trade-off of a lot of cantrips. Because if we're taking Firebolt versus Sacred Flame, right? The only difference is they both do 0 damage if you miss, right? They both do full damage if you hit, but the only difference is one's a saving throw and one's an attack roll, right? So the question is, are you switching which one they are, or are you adding 2 rolls? Because now Firebolt's going to have 2 rolls associated with it. I roll to attack you, and you have to roll to save. And if I roll to hit you, boom, I hit your armor class, and now once it hits you, it does no damage because you passed the save.
But again, that would be, you could say that is the gamble. You still have to roll the hit
if it's a choice,
and then that's when you min-max build and don't take the cantrip that has an attack roll. If you're taking this feat, you would stay away from ones that have that. Right?
So that is how you would run it.
I think so, because again, the idea that if this, because I see what you're saying is, yes, you can have spells that only are saves, which are essentially, in my opinion, auto hits, right? They're going to hit their target. The target has to save out of it. Means it's a spell that is going to seek out its target. It's on the target to take it or not.
Yes, your target is, it's your resistance to it. Exactly. It's like either your mental fortitude or your whatever.
And so the reason why I'm hesitant on replacing attack rolls is because to me, again, this is High Point talking, that would be fundamentally changing how the magic's working. Because an attack roll, essentially I look at it as if it requires an attack roll, it's because you're having to focus on the target, you're having to do something to focus
it,
exactly,
like whatever the case may be,
and release it. Which means with this, the double or nothing is not only replacing that whole thing, which is the gamble, but that's the other part is I don't think it should replace both gambles. I think the gamble is nothing instead of half. Whereas but you are correct though, because that does add 2 layers to something that would normally have 1. You either hit them or you don't, or they save or they don't. This one, you're adding, okay. Talking this through. One type of cantrip is you save, you either deal with it or you don't.
Yes, I deal with it or
I don't.
The other
type is I hit you or I don't.
Correct.
With that logic, if I want to do double damage, it shouldn't matter what spell I'm throwing at you. That is something I am tacking onto the spell regardless. No matter what spell I'm throwing at you, I am on top of it, attacking on. You now need to save or take double or nothing. Now it doesn't tack on an already savable throw. If you're already going to save, all I'm doing is making it harder when you fail it. All I'm doing is changing it. But if I have to still hit you with a spell, all I'm now doing is tacking on. Now you have to take it on top of that because I'm imbuing. So yeah, I would still say if it has an attack roll, you still have to do it.
You are giving the only thing I will say is it gives the opponent, it gives me, the defender, an opportunity to protect myself and take no damage where I would not have had that opportunity otherwise.
I agree with you, except it's not the target would not be aware of this from an in-game point of view. And again, I'm thinking from High Point's concept of I have to explain it via magic. I don't foresee this type of a feat being able to fundamentally change how a spell has been. Because remember, you learned a spell, it operates a certain way. Okay. This feat is you adapting it, but it's not able to change how it fundamentally works.
So one of the things that I remember him saying in the description is that
so just from the source, Cosmic says still roll to hit. If the target makes their save, it basically is a miss. So he agrees.
Okay. So he's saying the same thing you're saying.
Yeah.
So
not saying that means us right.
No, it's just
I
hear what you're
from
saying.
The source at least.
That's what he's saying. But so what he hold on, where's my train?
My bad. I knocked you off the train.
What were we talking about just before?
Because we were saying is basically, I was trying to say that, yes, you are right. You're giving the opponent an additional opportunity.
Okay, that's what my question was. All right, so because in his original description, he said that if there's no apparent save, use Arcana. All right, what would you consider an apparent save for something like a fire bolt? If I am going to shoot a fire bolt at you, how are you going to attempt to save that? Would that, because in my mind, the only way you're going to attempt to save it is dexterity. You're going to try to dodge out of the way.
So I don't know how he intended it, but I can think of a couple scenarios. So I believe something like Moonbeam is a single target.
No, Moonbeam is an area of effect.
Oh no, that's the effect. There's another one. Okay, so I'm trying to think. There's a couple that I know that there's one like Hellish Rebuke, there's Firebolt, and there's another one that is like radiant damage, right? I think there's another.
The one that I've been mentioning, Sacred Flame, is radiant damage.
Sacred Flame. Okay, so you have all of those, right? I would say, hey, if it's something like Sacred Flame, I could understand Arcana.
Well, Sacred Flame already has a saving throw.
Oh, okay. So that again, I don't know.
That's
so
okay.
So let's say it's like a fire, right? I could understand if it's like a bolt. And okay, so how about this? I would even go so further if we wanted to break this down. If the spell you're casting already has an attack roll, maybe instead of it being Arcana, it should be something like Dex. So if it's already an attack roll, make it fall in line with how an attack should work. You're going against their AC. That means their dexterity because their ability to move. If it's going against something like, let's say it's like, I know Ray of Sickness is an area of effect, but I don't have all of the notes. For sure. Something like Ray of Sickness, right? If I could just target a single enemy with it, that would be a Constitution check and not Arcana because you have to physically push back the nauseation.
Would you say
so? Like, these are the things that I'm saying.
What about bludgeoning being something like a
force punch,
strength
like one of those like a. There's one like the monk has, right, where you can do like a force punch from across the room. Like it's not really a spell.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking like Arcana makes sense if it is a generalized magic spell that will affect you magically. You have to get out of it by having magical resistance. But like something that would inflict a poison or sickness type feel, I could easily understand choosing Constitution.
What about psychic damage?
Wisdom or intelligence makes sense. I think I interpreted what he said as use Arcana as a base because it's magic
for sure,
unless it makes more sense
to choose the DM specific
to say, hey, Hellish Rebuke is, or it's a beam of direct. It's like a straight beam, right? It doesn't arc and find its target. It is a line of sight dex. Because if you move, I can only move so much, right?
Yeah.
So I would totally be down with adjusting the saving throw if either A, the DM decides I don't think Arcana works here, or even if the player's like, come on, man. Okay, so it's this spell, right? Can I use my wisdom instead? Can I say that I thought it meant, like, again, I want to use my wisdom to fight that this is an illusion. It's an illusion spell. Can I fight it? Or I want to use my intelligence to know that he's trying to, like, command word. Maybe, like, you're trying to do command word double. I mean, that's not really a damage spell, though. So it has to, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I totally agree that you could make justifications for other saves. I think that's just his catch-all to just allow for situations and characters who aren't strong in Arcana. But going back, I see arguments for both sides on whether or not to either replace the attack roll with the save or add the save. I think it makes sense to add the save because you are it's kind of like, think of it almost like remember how in Discord how the commands worked? You would say, like, I'm attacking this target with this weapon, but then you could add snippets to the end of the command to add, like, sneak attack damage and all of that.
Yep.
That's how I'm looking at it. Imagine the spell is the code you first type in. That can't change.
Yes, I totally
But you're
get that.
adding a snippet saying, I want to do double or nothing.
And so whenever it's a saving throw spell, it's just whatever the result of that saving throw is, it throws in the effects of the snippet.
Because you're imputing it to their save. But if it's an attack spell, you still have to hit them. But you're adding the effect that they have to save or take double. And that's the gamble.
I get that.
And that's where not only is it a gamble, but you're absolutely right, there is some weirdness there, but that's where the character build comes in. If the player is not building their character appropriately,
for sure. I mean, anybody who takes feats that aren't really inclusive or synergistic with the feats that they take, or with the character build that they have, like it's not going to be very effective.
Exactly. So I see both sides. High Point.
I feel that.
And again, and I'm saying that not from a perspective of I think that is the most balanced. I want to put that out there. We've only been talking about this for a few minutes.
For sure.
It may not be the most balanced, but it, for me, is what will make sense in High Point in terms of how magic works. The fact that because you aren't changing a spell, you're using your abilities of magic to alter or add. Again, and this is where the explanation of why I would limit it. Because if it's a warlock, if it's a cleric of the god of trickery, or if it's an artificer, you are adding your magic, right? Your choice or your patron's given right to doing this. It's not a feat as in the sense of you can do this just by thinking of it.
Right.
But that's why High Point, I would have to put those limitations on it, because otherwise I'd have to explain why this person who learned this feat can take a magic spell and change it how it fundamentally works, and I don't want to do that headache. Again, no, I'm not saying that I'm the right. I'm just saying that in High Point, it's easier.
I'm not going to live that life. All right.
But yeah, no. So Cosmic, excellent item. 100%, 10 out of 10. The double or nothing concept. Other than who I would give it, limiting who could use it, I love it. I want it. I'm probably going to, if I don't make it like a outright, hey, look at this, you can do this, I'm at least going to make sure people know if they're going to be a warlock or something like that it will be an option that they are aware of.
Okay, so I don't know if you do warlocks the same way, but in like 5th edition, warlocks have like invocations. That would be a sick invocation for a warlock.
Right.
That would be very cool.
So I'm down for it. I like it.
Bet.
So yeah, so that was item number 1 that we went over last week. But now we got Kage's insight on it. So yes, so let's go over this next item. So this is another cursed item that we got from Cosmic.
Cursed item.
Is this the cursed item or? Yes, it is a cursed item. Okay. That's. Yeah. There's. Okay, so let me get this set up properly. Actually, you know what I can do is, can I do PC cam? Hello, everyone.
Hello, friends.
There we go. And I'm just gonna close this a little bit more. Hello, there we go. Excellent. So let me get this up. So now we have the following item, the Pinnacle. So Cosmic says that he hasn't finished this yet. He's having a little bit of difficulties with some items. We kind of chit-chatted it a little bit last week, but I kind of wanted to save it for you because, like I've told them, not only is it more fun to have more ideas, that's the whole point of this, but I'm better with someone else in the room, like the soundboarding thing. So
bouncing it off, that's kind of the same way.
I didn't really get too much into it. I only kind of know a little bit about it, so
okay.
We're just going to kind of go into this fresh, and I'll see if I can remember the idea I gave him last week if Cosmic can't remind me. Okay, so this item, it is a weapon. It is called the Pinnacle. Weapon type is a pole arm or lance. It is a D12 piercing weapon for damage. It is a very rare, and it does require attunement, and it is cursed. Properties, it has reach, plus 5 feet to melee. It is ranged. It can be thrown 20 to 60 feet. And it has a special property as well. Bonus, it has a plus 3 to attack and damage rolls. So we have assuming a plus 3 magic weapon is what I read that as.
Sick.
And damage, it is a 1d12 plus 3 plus your strength modifier for piercing damage. Effects, it has 3 effects. It has a melee effect, a ranged effect, and a cursed effect.
A melee, a ranged, and a cursed.
Correct.
Epic. Okay.
He's still working on the melee effect, and I kind of remember the idea that I gave him, so we'll go over that last.
Okay.
I think I literally, it wasn't necessarily, I didn't know anything about this weapon, and he was just like, I can't figure out the melee effect for this cursed weapon, and literally on the spot, I just threw something out, and I'm like, actually, I kind of like that. Like, it was just one of those moments where I was just kind of almost joking, like half joking, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound half bad. Okay, so we're going to skip right, we don't have a melee effect yet, so we're going to skip right to the ranged effect. So as an action, you can throw this weapon 20 to 30 feet away. If you were targeting a creature, make a ranged attack roll with disadvantage due to the cursed part of the effect listed below, which we'll get on later. So you have, if you're using it as a ranged, you will have disadvantage. On hit, the creature takes 1d12 plus 3 plus your strength mod piercing damage. Additionally, once the lance lands, you can spend a bonus action to speak a command word, Mystify, causing the lance to start emitting fog in a 10-foot radius sphere centered on the lance.
So you basically create fog cloud around the lance.
The foggy sphere does not require concentration, as it is the weapon doing the work, and works as if casting the 8th level spell Anti-Magic Field.
The fuck? Okay.
So you can just chuck this at BBEG, get it anywhere near him, and just be like...
you got disadvantage. You're probably not going to hit him, but who cares?
But it doesn't matter. Just get it near him and just be like, you're done with your magic, bitch.
What did he say? Anti-Magic Field?
8th level spell Anti-Magic Field.
All right, stand by.
So you want to read that out for us?
Yes.
Oh, and the lance is immune to its own anti-magic field effect. The foggy sphere lasts for 1 hour.
Is there a way to turn it off with another command word?
I'm assuming you just re-speak the command.
Okay. All right, that's crazy. All right, so anti-magic field. It's a 10-foot radius invisible sphere of anti-magic. This area is divorced from the magical energy that suffices the multiverse. Within the sphere, spells can't be cast, summoned creatures disappear, and even magic items become mundane. Until the spell ends, the sphere moves with you, centered on you. I'm guessing this would just go with the sphere. Spells and other magical effects, except those created by artifacts or a deity, are suppressed.
So it doesn't destroy a magical item, but it basically becomes mundane while inside the sphere.
Correct. In the sphere, can't... Hold on. Spells and other magical effects, except those created by an artifact or a deity, are suppressed in the sphere and can't protrude into it. Oh, so if you're outside of the sphere,
you can't. Your magical weapon won't go into it either.
Wow.
So basically, yeah, this is it's almost like anti-magic shell.
A slot expended to cast a suppressed spell is consumed. If you're in the spell, if you're in the area and you try to cast a spell, your spell's gone.
Even though there's no effect.
Exactly. While an effect is suppressed, it doesn't function, but the time it spends suppressed counts against it. So you can still technically cast spells. So say I cast darkness inside this anti-magic. I still cast the spell, and when the field goes away, the darkness will pop back up.
If it were still in its time frame.
Yes.
So it doesn't. It doesn't get rid of anything. Okay. It just basically prevents it and mutes it for the time being. But it's the summoning part. Can you imagine you're in a big old battle and he's like, "Minions!" What minions? just what minions? You're gone.
So I don't think unsummoned minions will come back.
That's what I'm saying. So the idea is if you're in a battle and they summon minions and you just toss this in between their two minions or however many, and you're just like, Mystify. What happened to my minions?
What minions?
Gone. And then they just spent that spell slot to summon them, and then you're just
that's crazy.
Oh, that's so good.
Okay,
that's so good.
It says spells and other magical effects such as magic missile and charm person that target a creature or an object in the sphere have no effect on that target.
Yeah, so basically they'll hit the outside of the spell, the wall. So yeah, I mean, it does put them in somewhat of a protective state, but again, if you got a barbarian, just have the barbarian walk up in there without a magical weapon and just go to town.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you just gotta prepare because you don't want your buddies who have magical stuff keeping them alive.
Magical
You know what's
items.
interesting? You know, here's an interesting question that it doesn't answer. What does it do to Warforged? It suppresses magical. It basically, as far as I read it, it suppresses magical enchantments.
So
as far as I'm reading
let me ask you this.
Anything that's magically enchanted is suppressed.
According to High Point, one of the highest forms of magic is soul magic.
One of them, yeah.
So if this is technically because what I'm thinking is the Warforged are like have some sort of soul, right? Because if a player character can become a war, right? So if that's the case, then I feel like they are run by that soul. So does this anti-magic field turn off soul magic? Does it stop and prevent that from functioning?
But what I'm thinking of is because technically the Warforged is a different higher level power magic, but it's not technically officially deity magic like the anti-magic shield specifically states, right?
What is it? It's a deity magic and something else.
Artifact, right?
Artifact or deity, yeah.
So if you consider Warforged to be artifact, you're fine. They could be very easily considered artifacts, especially with soul magic. But and again, I don't know how I would have to consider how I consider this, right? This is
fair.
This is not an official High Point ruling, but here's the idea: if you consider them in artifacts by just existence, they would not be affected. However, if you consider them essentially enchanted living animated things with a soul, difference, not an animated object with nothing, but if what keeps the body going is magic, but what's driving it is a soul, then would this essentially shut down the Warforged, the body? But it won't suppress. But it won't suppress the soul. So here's my thing: is you could do this one of two ways, or one of three ways. Nothing happens because it's an artifact. It gets shut down because it physically just can't, like a sword, right? A magical item that's imbued, the magic's still in there. It just the magic can't come out.
Yes.
Just so it could shut down the Warforged. Or imagine you do that. The body collapses, right? The Warforged just powers off and collapses. But what stands is the embodiment, like the actual soul itself. So imagine if it was like someone like my other character from the other Discord, who was a adventurer, who was a human, died in an explosion and then became Warforged. So imagine if he was in this bubble, what if his Warforged body fell, but then you saw his spectral image of his original human form? Because the idea is that he is still the driver.
Right.
But he's attached to the body that is dead. But so these are just different ways you could do this depending on because how this is a kind of more of an interesting question on how do you view
what about
Warforged?
something like you have an animate object, right? Or there's what's the spell? There's like a really high level spell where you could basically like bring an inanimate object to like life. It might be animate object, but I feel like there's something else.
I think there's a higher, just an upcast.
Because you like basically give it like permanent life. It's not like temporary or whatever. It's like you basically create a being from this, right? And so if you were like, it's like a low intelligent creature. It's nothing like super sentient.
I think in that particular case, the magic is creating. I would view that as magic imbued false intelligence. It is not an entity, a living entity.
So something inside there would
think it would just diffuse. It's gone. It's poof. Because it's an
and it wouldn't come back, or is it just suppressed? Because most of what it talks about,
I would have to know more about how like the actual spell and the level. But technically, if it's a high enough level spell, it would only be suppressed. Because especially if it's a permanent spell that actually granted it like a permanent thing, then yeah, it would only be suppressed. Like normal inanimate object, it would just go away. I think if it were a permanent one, I could see it being suppressed. I could even see it being completely taken away. Like for instance, I guess you could say like, you know, same thing with like Artificer. They can make like little like basically mage hand companions. They can like make like little things. Yeah. So it's like, what would you consider that? Would they have to remake that? Like, you know, because it's not really alive. It's kind of just their energy pushing it. So there's a lot of different layers to it. I think this could be fun.
I do think it would.
I think this it's not so much that I'm saying that in High Point it would do all of this. I'm just saying that this brings up really interesting ideas when you fundamentally bring out what is deity magic and what is an artifact. You start to get into some real fundamentals of like, well, what are certain things? Like, what magic falls into certain areas.
So, continuing to read down.
We haven't got. Yeah, okay. So
there's just a couple more features because they have. Never mind. I totally forgot. We were just talking about creatures. Yes, still talking about that spell. They actually have a section here talking about creatures and objects.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so anti-magic field.
It says a creature or object summoned or created by magic temporarily winks out of existence in the sphere, such as creatures created instantly reappears once the space and the creature occupied no longer within the sphere.
Okay, so if you summon things, it doesn't literally banish them or take them away, but it will temporarily take them out of the playing field.
Got you.
And they can't walk out of the shield because they're not there.
Yes.
So for that 1 hour, basically, if they do summon something and you can get that thing there, at least for the hour, it's not going to come back at you. So yeah, okay, so it won't completely get rid of anything summoned, but it will ruin the day.
And it does say that Dispel Magic has no effect on this, as well as if there were multiple spheres, they would not interfere with each other.
Okay, so they just basically ignore each other.
Yeah, they would they could create the space to make it bigger,
but they would ignore each other. There's no extra overlap or cancellation. Okay.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. They have a section about magical travel, but it's just basically saying the same thing.
I think that's actually pretty dope. I think maybe it would be worth considering because this is, I mean, you're basically just saying that the weapon has a charge or has charges for anti-magic field that are command word operated. I was going to say, if this is a different type of ability, maybe not 10 feet, maybe 5 feet, because you're essentially the idea is stab it into an enemy and then turn it on, so the enemy is what's done. But, I mean, realistically, for a high-level thing, and it's basically just imbued with this spell, there's no reason to change it.
So he says this is the ranged ability.
Yeah, so
does that mean you have to throw it before you activate it?
Yes, because it's on a ranged hit. So you can only activate it after it hits on a ranged attack. So I guess technically our original idea of if you... hang on a second. So as an action, you can throw this weapon 20 to 60 feet. If you are targeting a creature, make an attack roll with disadvantage. On hit, the creature takes that damage. Additionally, once the lance lands, you can spend a bonus action to speak the word. So yeah, you do not have to hit. The idea is that, as far as I read this, there's a ranged attack with disadvantage, but in general... Additionally, once it lands. So it does say once it lands.
Does that mean, theoretically, if I wanted to, I could throw it at my feet and be like...
I think so.
Boom.
I think the idea is that it's meant to not be something that can just be activated at any time. I think the idea is it has to be done after a attack/throw. But as a DM, throwing it at your feet is a throw. Doesn't say it has to go. I mean, it does say you can throw this 20 to 60 feet, but that doesn't mean you can't throw it into the ground. I mean, unless you make something where it has to go unless there's a bunch of other things, I would say that as long as it was thrown, as long as it was a ranged maneuver, not I stab it into the ground and let go.
Yeah.
But as long as it traveled distance, left your hand in a ranged fashion, that should be... I mean, I would almost go so far as for not a high point change, but a high point rewrite. I would just say that it does all of that as ranged, but I don't know if I would say that it has to be thrown, or if I would just say that as long as it's more than 5 feet away from you, or as long as it's more than 10 feet away from you, you can activate the command word. So essentially, it's almost a failsafe. You can't be in the bubble. You have, and maybe that's the idea, is, for whatever reason, maybe you can't be in the bubble. So maybe it has to be 10 feet, but then that gets rid of the requirement for the attack. So that just means you could leave it on, somewhere and then just activate it.
Right.
I don't know if he wants that to be available, because that'd be a cool trap. Put it in a box, have it delivered somewhere, and just be like, all right, we got that whole vault. Imagine in a magic safe. Box.
Oh, yes.
Imagine, just here, can you put this in that magical safe? And you're just like, mystify. Chink. Oh, but again, it depends on. Okay, so Cosmo says if you miss, you can still activate the anti-magic field effect, and the 10-foot sphere gives the potential for targeting multiple creatures within the sphere. So I would say that. Okay, so Cosmic, let us know. Are you meaning this to be that it has to be thrown / used in a ranged attack before you can activate it, or is it that this command word can be activated at any time, like even if you're holding it? Or does it have to, like, what is the specifics on when you can activate Mystify? That is, I guess, the big deal, because you put it under ranged, which I assume means that it has to have been used in some ranged fashion. And you can even say, like, you could, again, in High Point, if that's the case, I would justify it saying that the way it was designed, as it travels through the air, it's collecting, magical essence. And that's what it uses for the anti-magic field. Or as it travels through the air, it's collecting all of the magical aura, especially when it lands near, and it collects the aura as it I would
using that logic gave me the idea that its field's diameter would be half of the distance thrown, or like the radius. So like if I threw it 20 feet, it would be like a 10-foot radius. So like it's literally accumulating energy as it goes. So like
if you threw it the full 60 feet, it gets 30 feet of that would be kind of dope. But see, at that point,
maybe your roll could instead be like determining like how far it goes.
Yeah. There's a lot to play. There's a lot to play with there. So Cosmic says preferably after it's thrown, as to avoid the effect affecting yourself or your party. So I would say one of two things. Then you could throw it into the lore behind it that when thrown, you could even say like when thrown, as it arcs through the air, you hear a slight whistle, a hum of beautiful melody as small fissures inside, the shaft are collecting not air, but magical essence. There are two, it's like just little pits that collect magical essence, and that is what it gathers in order to activate the command word. So you can do that if it has to be thrown. The other way around that is I would say that the command word can only be activated if it's more than 10 feet away from you. Mm-hmm. Boom. You cannot activate it if the weapon is closer than 10 feet to the attuner. Because at that point, you don't have to throw it. It's designed to be thrown, but it also gives more fun flavor, or not, I hate that word. more fun, interesting gameplay in terms of what we were talking about. Yeah. Deliver it somewhere and activate it. Because you could
throw it right next to the barbarian. If the barbarian's like sitting there in like melee combat with the BBEG, and he just keeps like hitting them with these like powerful spells, and then you just drop this, or the BBEG's got this crazy magic sword that just cuts through the barbarian's resistance.
Ooh, imagine being disarmed and then being like, again, random scenario, but you get disarmed and pushed away, and then just being like, mystified. Like, just like as your last word before death, you could be like, I'm about to die. It's my last death saving throw. Can I just utter one word before I die? Mystify. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it could just being able. So I would say yes. I would say either. Okay, so he says a musical aspect makes it sound like a bard weapon. I mean, true, but
doesn't have to be a whistle.
But yeah, but yeah, I would just say that if you are gonna require the attack or the throw, just put something behind the lore of why the throw matters.
What's bringing that?
Otherwise, I would just say give them the benefit of saying that the attuner has to be more than 10 feet. That way, like you said, you get to attack more than one person with a radius. You get to make sure that you don't get affected by the wielder. Mm-hmm. But it also puts that limitation. You can never use it in a melee battle. You can never even if you would save your life to activate it, you can't. Like, you can't use it to save yourself. So that's another limitation, is it's because it's a cursed weapon. You can never use it to save yourself.
I really want to know what the curse is.
We're about to get there. So okay. different ideas. I'm kind of down, because it's such a high level weapon. I'm kind of down with the anti-magic field. I just
what's the rarity again?
It's very rare.
Very rare.
So I would like to,
just so I know now. Do you want to start tracking rarity on items? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one more stat we don't really have to worry too much about. Not in terms of like the rating part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I would just play around more, and I would think more about the reasoning. Not changing. I like the idea of this is part of the ranged effect. I think the only thing I would do is fine-tune the details of why. Like, why does it have to be thrown in order to only get this command word?
Right.
Or do you just explain it that it has to be far enough away from you? Because again, I love Listen, that because it does more.
Oh, this is going to help me give me good ideas for like what the other abilities can do.
Yeah.
So there were 3 abilities. It was range,
melee, and a cursed one. So we're about to do the cursed.
Got you. All right.
Cosmic says technically one of a kind, but not powerful enough to justify legendary.
That's fair.
Totally. That's very fair. Okay, so the cursed effect. So upon attunement, its owner is given the blindness condition. Blindness condition. So that would make sense for why it's disadvantage on ranged weapon.
Okay.
So symbolized by their eyes taking on the appearance akin to that of snakes or other reptiles. Specifically, the creature sees everything as a darkened blur, and other creatures emit a red glow as body heat is given off. Think of how a snake sees. So you basically go ultra infravision. Not just infra as in you get to see body heat in low light, but it's like that's all you get. It's very blurred out. Yeah, okay. So you basically get reptile vision.
Gotcha. But it doesn't lend much for depth perception.
Yeah,
for
not
ranged
at all.
Attacks.
Short of casting Remove Curse, using a spell slot of 6th level or higher, this form of blindness cannot be undone. Abilities, effects, and other actions that require line of sight or a point creature you can see can still be done, but all at disadvantage. So anything that requires your sight's at disadvantage, which is why ranged attacks are always at disadvantage. So this right here, knowing this curse.
Is that the whole thing?
Yeah, that's it. So knowing this is the curse, basically you pick it up, you become blind. So you get. Actually, that's not actually that terrible, because if you can pick up the feat blind fighting, gone. All of that shit, don't even need to remove the curse. Blind fighting, you're done, right? You can just take blind fighting.
I mean, granted, blind fighting is a small range.
But melee. And you have reach, so blind fighting should still give you good
For
melee
sure.
combat.
I mean, it's not going to help you with any of your ranged stuff.
No, but it will help you in melee combat. That infravision would be beautiful in pitch darkness. If you can have a buddy cast darkness around you, all you got to do, just cast darkness, and you'd be able to see the body heat. I believe you could still see body heat through darkness. I would have to look that up and see if it actually blocks body heat.
in it depends on what's receiving it, because like you know, like the like our infrared cameras, they don't need any light to see body heat and stuff like that.
That's what I'm saying. Is I don't know if the spell darkness would actually stop infrared light, or if it just stops. But knowing this curse, so it gives you the blindness effect, which is what it's cursed on. So this already, I don't know. I don't know if this changes my mind on the ranged attack now, because that's very interesting to be able to have a ranged attack and then an anti-magic field. I guess it's hard to connect like those two things.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Equating like why did you go blind to do anti-magic field kind of thing. But that's again more of high point nonsense of justifying
lore
things.
And like.
So if this is the cursed part, is you go blind, that makes sense why he's struggling with a good melee. So let's go over what I think, what I brought up randomly for the melee option, which actually kind of might work with maybe I don't know. Okay, so what I was thinking of is he said I don't have a melee effect for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just randomly threw out there, I said, how about this? On hit, 10% chance that the target swaps places with one of its allies in the initiative. So it has to be an ally in initiative within 100 feet. And if no ally exists, what did I say? I said if no ally, I would have to bring up the video. Yeah. Because I just throwing something out there where it's like you just get a 10% chance to basically pull another creature to you, which would be kind of cool, because if you have ranged enemies, right, and you attack like the barbarian, and you get, oh, hey, what up? Who gave us a follow?
Oh, did we get a follower?
We did.
Very nice. Very cool.
I have no idea. Cthulhu? Or is that just Cthulhu? Cthulhu X? Appreciate the follow, man.
Very
welcome.
Cool. Welcome
So I might actually have to bring up the video. Cosmic, do you remember specifically what I had wrote out or what we had talked about in terms of the modifications? Why is it called Forgotten Realms when it's the only campaign setting?
No one's forgotten about it.
I mean, that's legit. It is it was one of the most popular back in the day, but that's actually fucking hilarious. It is. I mean, to be true though, they always go back to like it's always Unearthed Arcana and Forgotten Realms. I mean,
yeah,
they must be geologists and historians. That's.
I mean, I guess.
No, welcome to the stream. Welcome. Thank you for the follow. So yeah, I would have to Cosmic. Hopefully, do you remember it all? People at Wizards of the Coast. Why would the Hawks be gray though? I mean,
my goodness. Listen, haters.
It's overcast. They're trying to hide in the storms.
Exactly.
So kind of something about forcing targets to swap spaces. Yeah. So I think mine was something about like.
So I guess my question, whenever I'm thinking about like weapons and what they can do, a lot of where my mind goes is synergy, and even in their curses, I like to think of synergy, like how it goes, how it flows together. And what types of things make this weapon, this item, the way that it is. So, honestly, with this, because I'm thinking, like, what do we want, like, the primary focus of this to be? Do we want it to be how it can shut down magic? Do we want it to be how somebody can fight, like how it can use infrared to its advantage? Maybe the infrared allows you to see magic as well as what do you call it? As well as like the actual infrared body heat of people that are coming around. So while you cast out your magic field, you know, you can see people like walk into it and everything on them, just like all the magic on them like disappear, right? And then when, you know, you're in melee with people, maybe... I don't know, would it be more about stopping certain magical items? Would it be...
And that's the thing too, is now that I know what like the curse is, giving the blinded effect, that's where I would start from. Because he has the curse, because he has the blinded effect, that's where I would want to launch what are the boons, right? Because it's a cursed item. Obviously the cursed item's focus is the bad effects, right? You can't take it off, it's gonna either kill you over time, or it's just gonna be annoying in certain situations. But the boon, in my opinion, for cursed items, the boon should do like one of three things. Balance the negative, essentially make it almost neutral, where it's like the good really does outweigh the bad, kind of like the inversion shield. Gives you some health, doesn't give you some health, but over time they balance each other out because the intelligence grows and it becomes more of a useful item every time you fuck up and die, right? So the inversion shield, that's one respect of the cursed item is truly balanced. Each side really goes with each other. Then you have another side where it's basically a cursed item that you want to get rid of. So there either is no boon, or the boon is there almost for comedic effect. So it's literally not just telling your player, go get shit on.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you can just do that as a DM. Like, oh, guess what? You now lose 1 permanent HP a day for this ring because you put it on. Go get it off.
Sucks.
Yeah, sucks to be you, right? No other benefits, just sucks to be you. Like, that's bullshit. No player wants that kind of a cursed item unless you're being a big dick and you're literally just, you know, pushing the DM to do something that bad. But again, something throwing that where it's like, oh, it takes 1 permanent HP away every day. But on a crit, it gives you 1d10 permanent HP. Like, that could suck that could very quickly kill you and suck at a certain level. That could also be fucking dope if you were a massive attacker. Or a tiefling who never gets to like...
You're a freaking fighter that fights all the time.
What is it, like the tiefling that can't crit fail? They always get to reroll 1s.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, if you could have something like that where it's like, you know... So either you balance it perfectly to where overall, it balances out. You either have it to where you want to get rid of the the curse, and the boon is only there for comedic effect or to lessen the downside, or you have a cursed item that makes the player question whether they should get rid of it. As in, the boon is so good, you're not sure that you're willing to, like, you don't think that the curse is actually that bad.
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing. Like, it could be like, hey, you take -10 to your charisma, to any charisma check, but you get a permanent +5 to your strength. Like, no one likes me, but I can punch people now. You know, like it's just one of those things where those are my approaches to cursed items, right?
Yeah.
So now
Cosmic asked a real quick question about anti-magic field.
So, does the anti-magic field negate the monk's Kai-empowered strikes? The monk's Kai-powered strikes specifically say that unarmed strikes count as magical for bypassing a creature's resistance and immunity. Yes.
So I would say that it doesn't stop him from being able to do the strikes, but they would no longer be magical while in that field.
I disagree. I would disagree.
How so?
Because they're not magical.
What do you mean?
Because specifically, if you think about it, not only is it their energy force, right? Which, again, high point, I look at them differently. It's magic, but different layers. But also looking at how Kai works. When something counts as magical, I look at that as it isn't now magical. You're not making it magical, but what you're doing is it
has the same effects
now has
as
the
magical
checkbox that allows it. Like, so basically, it bypasses a creature who needs some, magical damage, but they aren't magical themselves. Like, you are not it's not mage armor, right? It's not a mage weapon. You're not imbuing your fists with magic. You are bypassing someone's magical defense purely by your will and your energy within you. Your energy isn't coming out as magic. You are reinforcing your own body to bypass
I can see that being what's happening.
So I would say in high point, monks are unaffected because I do not view ki, internal energy, the same as external magic. They are all within the same weave. Obviously, it's all a function of the same sources. But as you know, soul magic is not the same as actual natural magic in my realm. Music is not the same as druid magic. And therefore, Kai, energy inside your body, is not magic. It is a different form of energy, but it is not magic.
See, that makes me feel like Warforged would be fine in here then.
Could be. That's a whole different conversation.
That mentality right there makes me feel like Warforged would have
that's why I preface the question.
Monk.
But that's where I preface the question of it's not about what you're doing with your body. That's the question of how do you view a Warforged physically, not the character, not everything it makes it, but the Warforged's physical body. That it's more of this kind of an item, this kind of magic anti-magic field. I think just brings interesting questions like philosophy, like D&D philosophy, right?
Oh, of course.
What makes a Warforged a Warforged? Is it a divine energy source that binds it together, or is it just magic? And can you temporarily subdue that magic?
I mean, according to you, that depends on the Warforged.
And that's what I haven't dealt with Warforged a lot. They're not my favorite thing to ever come out of D&D, but I'm not against them. It's just I've just never really dove into it. So it's something I will continue to think about now, because that is a fundamental question.
So that brings just a point of curiosity to my mind. Is there a Warforged that exists in High Point?
Oh, plenty. Yeah. I just, in terms of as a player, I've never played one.
Okay.
And I have never DM'd somebody. Oh, I've DM'd one person, which is in the Discord. That was in that Discord.
Okay.
I've only ever DM'd one person who has ever played a Warforged. I've never played in a game with a player who played a Warforged. And I've only had the one Discord, which that was only a handful of games, so that one never really went anywhere. And as a class or race, I'm not exactly sure technically what they fall under. I think that was also a very big confusing point, because I think at one point they were...
No, they're a race.
Okay.
They're a race, not a class. Yeah.
Okay. I think there was a confusion at one point about something like that. But anyway, it's just never been... That was always an area of D&D where it's like constructs and those kind of things I always viewed as like summoned enemies. I'd never really got big into considering that as like playable characters and what the implications were. So it just never came up. Now they do exist. I have to incorporate them into High Point. It's just that I because they're not my big thing. They're there, but I'll deal with it when someone wants to interact.
It hasn't been.
They're not common and they're not everywhere, and it's just kind of one of those.
No, that's fair.
You know, it's. I'll get to it when I get to it because I don't need to right now, and it's not of an interest. Like, I don't even know why. Like, I couldn't even tell you why. It might just be because it's finally, and I know that it always sounds stupid whenever you try to put any limitation on D&D because it's a game of fucking magic and imagination. So it's dumb whenever I hear myself be like, oh, but, and it's like, what do you, it's all magic. It's all fake. But that's starting to get to a level of that sci-fi fantasy that starts to bridge the gap where I allow a lot of sci-fi fantasy in my D&D for much, much higher level gameplay because I always like to push the bounds and figure out, you know, what's the next level, right? It can't just always be going to taverns, fighting monsters in caves, and coming back to town, right? Like, I have high-tech stuff. There's not technology, but I do have high-tech concepts.
I mean, look at Dobbs' conversation right now.
Yeah. So I have those high-tech things, but as a common day-to-day, I just want to be a walking piece of armor, it's like, if I like the idea of if you wanted to make like an Alphonse, I think. If you wanted to make an Alphonse character, backstory and all of a bad situation, that to me sounds so much more interesting than, well, I just want to be a walking piece of armor because I can be. And that's where I feel like maybe in High Point, the reason why I've kept it more rare is because it sounds to me like it should be a rarity. It doesn't sound like, when I hear race, I hear something that has been able to propagate and evolve and make its own, where I get race as a different concept in D&D, race choice. Yeah. But for me, I wouldn't just want someone to be a Warforged just because they want to be a walking tank.
So for you, it would be more along the lines of being a vampire or being a werewolf rather than being its own race. Kind of like that?
Well, yes. I mean, in the terms of mechanics, I understand why they call it a race, right? It's a race, class, I get it. I just don't like the idea that it's like I don't like the idea that Warforged are born. Like, in the sense of you weren't a baby Warforged and now you're an adult Warforged. Like again, in the Discord, that guy came to me, that buddy came to me and said, hey, I have this really cool idea. I wanted to play a Warforged, but I don't just want to be one. Here's the reason why I'm a Warforged, right? He was working on an item, died in an explosion, and then kind of like Dr. Manhattan his way into a body. That I'm totally chill with. An Alphonse character, right? I fucked up with some magic that I shouldn't have been fucking around with, and now I'm in this body. I am 100% down if the player comes to me with a better than normal reason for being a Warforged, I'm chill. Even if you just come and say my dad was fucked up and try to, did
experiments on me as a kid.
And now I'm in a body. Like, I don't care what it is. I'm not a huge fan of Warforged as they just exist and they're everywhere and blah, blah, blah. I think, just like if you want to play a vampire, if you want to play something like that, I don't want an entire party of them. That sounds weird. Unless there's a very, very good story, and that would be cool. But
we came from a coven all together and we escaped and we
it's when it comes to Warforged, I don't see them. I don't want to say I don't see them as viable characters. It's just that I think that those are those types that really should stand out. They should be things that they're like, I love the stories where it was like, in the ancient war, Warforged were, the dead were reanimated to Warforged. Like, those are cool concepts, and that's why I could see, like, shit, another follower. What is going on here? Who do we got here? PCM. What's going on, PCM? Thank you for the follow. Welcome. We are just chit-chatting a little bit. What are we actually chit-chatting about right now?
We were talking about
Warforged, just in general, like,
but we originally started with the anti-magic field and what's gonna affect the anti-magic field, and then we got distracted with Warforged. It's all good.
I think Warforged for me is just I don't know. It's always just been it's been a non-interest to me, and I just think it has a hard place in D&D for most campaigns. But I think it does have a place. I have a higher standard. I don't even call it a higher standard. I want to make sure that like when you came to me and said you wanted to be a bender, it wasn't just going to be like, oh, okay, sure, let's just do that. Like, I even sat you down and was like, bro, if I'm going to do this, if you're going to make me make 4 damn classes just to make yours work, play it to be right about it, and you did. You had a phenomenal backstory. Davd is a great character, but it wasn't just like, I mean, that's a big deal, right? And so that's why I feel like with Warforged, if you're gonna come to me with a Warforged, be serious about it. You know what I mean? Like, give me something that I want to work with. Don't just be like, I found a suit of armor I really liked, and so I asked my god, can I be that suit of... like, come on now.
Yeah.
No. But I mean, hell, I was a great warrior. I was one of the best holy warriors of my god, and then on one of the biggest missions, I fucked up. And he banished me into this suit of armor, level 1, to repent for my sins. Bro, let's go. You're a Warforged. Like, give me some juice to work with. Don't just be it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it really should stand out. You that backstory needs to wow me.
PCM,
like, I'm just
mentioned something that gives me a question, because we were talking about what would be affected inside of this field, and it specifically says divine magic would not be affected. Right. And so my question is, they play an Aasimar. What if you're an Aasimar? Because Aasimar is legit divine level magic. You are technically like a fallen angel or like angelkin or something like that. And if you have like any Aasimar abilities or divine abilities with something like that, technically work in that place. Or is it dampened enough divine power that it would not be able to overcome an anti-magic field?
Let's see. So we got one more thing from Cosmic. Let me read the thing from Cosmic real quick, and then I'll get to that question too. So Cosmic says, we're in a city of death. Oh, so this is his D&D campaign from today.
Okay.
They're in a city of death in search of a magical hammer for a pair of blacksmiths. We awakened a hostile crystal golem. Entered a room with skulls embedded in the wall, one of which is my character's ancestor, thanks to a nat 20 plus 2 investigation roll. It can be good for backstory, ancestral lore building. Trying to think of what can be good for... What conversation were we on? That was a little while ago. It was only like 5 minutes ago. It does sound like a cool campaign, though. Crystal Golem. And I do like that you were able to find... I'm interested... It's interesting to see how you, like, nat 20 on a skull and were able to find out that it was your ancestor. The way the eye sockets are. I've seen that many times in all of the skulls of my ancestors.
Exactly.
All right, so let's see. So now we have PCM. So just roaming around Twitch where you do character stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. You play as an Aasimar. Now you want to play a Warforged, so thanks for the ideas, but that's for later. Let's see. Well, either the magic field will simply doesn't apply to divine magic because it isn't the right type, or because divine magic is normally just that powerful.
That's
what is
my
the
thought
answer would
process.
Change the true outcome. So I think that when it comes to the anti-magic field, obviously any divine power, like basically that would come from a deity. Okay. Oh, I don't have access to it. I'm gonna have to go outside of this.
Do you want me to read what I got?
No, let me pull it up here. Nope, I spelled that wrong, but there we go. Forgotten Realms. Take my words with a grain of salt. Okay, so let's see. So Aasimars were human-based, plain touch, native outsiders that had their blood... Some good otherworldly characteristics. They were often, but not always, descended from Celestials and creatures of pure good alignment. So they are descendant of Celestials, but I would say that because they're just like descendants, kind of like a sorcerer is a descendant of a magical mage, and that's why they have magic. It's because they have their sorcery, but that doesn't make them a power. Like, it doesn't make them that mage, but it does give them the imbuements. So I would say that an Aasimar probably would not... just like, because I don't think an Aasimar would be affected any more than a Deva would be.
Where one of their racial features is, they can like bust out their wings, right? And on top of their regular damage, sometimes when they have their wings out, it like increases their damage or something to that effect. Let me see if I can actually pull it up and read it.
You're not good at balancing.
And so I'm
balancing is overrated. Balancing can make things too predictable and this is where I think we want to end the conversation today with, like, the ending topic of how we look at balancing, because you're right, it can make things predictable. So you were saying?
One of the abilities. Let's do the Protector. So it says Radiant Shroud. Starting at 3rd level, you can use your action to unleash divine energy within yourself, causing your eyes to glimmer and 2 incorporeal wings to sprout from your back. Your transformation lasts for 1 minute until the end of your... lasts for 1 minute or until you end it as a bonus action. During this time, you have a flying speed of 30 feet, and once on each of your turns, you can deal an extra... radiant damage to one target that you deal damage to with an attack or a spell. So like something like that, would that still persist?
I think so, because it's not coming from a divine source. It is a divine type, but again, it's a diluted version of it.
And that's fair.
Because like for instance, a cleric does not cast magic. They are their deity's wand, right? A deity chooses to imbue in their cleric, says, you are allowed to have this spell for today, cleric. I am choosing to let you take my magic. My energy will be held in you for this purpose, and at the time that I authorize, aka that you deem needed, you can use that magic. That is what a cleric prays for a spell. And a deity gave them that spell. But that spell is not divine magic. Right? A cleric's whole spell would be stopped by this.
Very much so.
Even though that spell, by all definition of a cleric, came directly from a deity, it is still not deity magic. Same thing with an Aasimar. It is a diluted version. It is not from the deity.
I feel that.
So that's where I would draw that line of why.
It's almost like it's channeled through whatever that entity is.
It's the filter, yeah.
Yes.
And the same thing where, because again, it's that source isn't
a divine weapon. It would be strictly the divine. That would make a lot of sense.
And the divine weapon is imbued directly from a divine source. Same thing with like a Deva. Devas are technically gods. They're just reincarnated versions of their old selves. So they have all those ancient, but they're not gods. They're not deities, but they have a history like one. Like they have ancestral knowledge like one. So I would go with that. I want to see. I really wish I would have known a little bit more. If I would have remembered a little bit more about what I had said about the what I just don't know. Cosmic, do you remember what day we talked about this? Do you remember what stream or what game I was playing when we talked about the melee weapon? Because that's the only thing that I don't remember was that Saturday or Sunday. And I could try to pull up specifically what we were chatting about. That was just the only downside is I can't remember what I was playing.
I cannot. I want to find something that flows really well with
Sunday, so that would have been, if it was Sunday, it would have been Baldur's Gate that I was playing. Definitely wasn't later on. I think it was earlier in the game.
Let's see if I.
But I'm just not able to find it now. VOD page. What would be great is if I could just go to the end of my stream. Actually, I might be able to do that. I might just be able to go to the end of the stream. Give it a... Nope. Okay, so it wasn't then. It must have been on this stream then. Okay. I think it was this one. This will be good because I need to learn how I can go back on these easier. But if I go to my VOD page, I should be able to go to...
of the logo.
Yeah, I'm so happy with that.
That's very cool.
Respond 10 out of 10. Looking forward to Monday's stream. Okay, so it must have been before that. Maybe it was on. Was it on Thursday then? Maybe it was on Thursday. Strength, dexterity. What if there was 3 lowest to the tie? Double or nothing. Okay, so this is where we're talking about double or nothing. Stack with upcasting. And then... Because I remember you brought up the idea of the item to me. don't see it in this particular stream either. No, and that's where I was talking about how I do stat rolls. Interesting. So Cosmic says, I want to mention that the other item is meant for early game that is also cursed, but just the things it is built from as something for you to think about next week. Oh, gotcha. The item that you had mentioned earlier that we were, the other minor cursed item that you haven't gotten to use yet. Gotcha. So that's going to be more of an early game one. Okay, so... Was it all the way back at the Baldur's Gate 3 review? No, it can't have been.
Where?
Okay, so it wasn't that one. Oh boy, I don't even know why it's so hard for me to find this. I would think that it would be in my chat log, but I can't find it. I could have sworn that we chatted about this, Cosmic. I thought like we actually had like a couple back and forths on this, but I don't see anywhere in the Baldur's 3 gameplay. Because at the very end, Kage came in, so it definitely wasn't the Baldur's Gate gameplay. And was it when I was playing Shadows of Doubt, maybe? Looking forward to Monday's stream. No, it definitely wasn't at the end of that stream. I'm so confused now. Because I know you had brought it up, and I know we had chit-chatted about it. But I thought you had typed more, so maybe it was just all voice. I just remember saying something about, like, yeah, being able to, like, swap places with an ally, and then there was a question of whether or not it, like, if there was an ally to swap, what would happen. But now that I'm rethinking of it, that doesn't really work for, again, the curse. So coming back to his item, right?
Yeah.
It blinds you. That's the curse. You pick it up, you attune, it blinds you. So the big question is the ranged effect of the anti-magic shield, like... Because you can't be in the anti-magic shield.
It doesn't say you can't.
Well, it's not supposed to be activated with you around. The idea is it's supposed to be away. Will-o'-the-Wisp Katana...
So, read up the masks. He wanted to mention specifically another item, the other cursed item.
Oh, this is the other cursed item that you didn't get to use. So just a quick little recap. So it's a Will-o'-the-Wisp Katana. Handle is a severed, mummified, and cursed hand of a demon. Hilt's comprised is a compressed skull fragment from many slain creatures, and the blade looks and feels like glass, but it's actually a ghostly, otherworldly material with Will-o'-the-Wisp orbiting the blade in pairs of 2, equal to the player's level. It's a +1 weapon, and you want the Will-o'-the-Wisp to have some sort of abilities. Bro, that immediately makes me think, because it's like 2 Will-o'-the-Wisps per level. How cool would it be that, like, it's 1 foot, like you can turn the weapon into like a whip sword, 1 foot per willow.
Or like it can change shape.
Like it's a sword, right? Like because it is it's a katana. But then imagine if you could like turn it into like a whip, and then it's the size, the length of the whip that you can attack with is 1 foot per willow or per will-o'-the-wisp. So if you get 2 per level, it's useless like at level 1, right? It's a 2 foot whip. Mm-hmm. But you could still use it to like wrap something or like maybe do a little swing. But then at level 2, it's a 4 foot whip. Level 3, it's a 6 foot whip.
Right.
You're getting 2 every single level. So eventually at level 5, you got a 10 foot whip. You have a whip now with reach.
Oh yeah.
A couple of levels later, you got 20 foot. Like, that would be really cool to turn the willows into some sort of like ethereal
Chains,
whip. And then you could even have it do like cold touch damage. like, or whatever,
chill
or
touch,
necrotic damage or whatever. Like, I forget what Will-o'-the-Wisps actually do.
So I'm looking at it right now. So they have a couple of things. They have something called Consume Life as a bonus action. Will-o'-the-Wisp can target one creature it can see within 5 feet of it that has 0 hit points and is still alive. The target must succeed a DC 10 Constitution saving throw against this magic or die. If the target dies, the Will-o'-the-Wisp regains 3d6 hit points. So it's like if there's an unconscious person, if you knock somebody out and you hit him with this, so you could be going around doing non-lethal damage on purpose just so you could just smack him with this and
then
use
gain
this
life.
ability.
Yeah. And then gain life. Cousin says, but the curse is that each day you make a DC 15 con save. On a failure, the player either takes 1d4 permanent damage to their max HP, bypassing temp HP, or a -1 to their con score, player's choice. And then once you go to 0, you're probably dead. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. And so it says, how often do they have to do that? Every day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not where I was thinking he was going to go. I was thinking, because he said it was like the mummified hand, I was thinking of like, how cool would it be like every time you crit? Like every time you use it and you crit, like there's like a couple fingers and like a finger closes around you, making it harder to let go and grab the weapon, but eventually too many crits and the weapon fuses to your hand. See? And then it starts like taking your life force. Like, I love mechanics of cursed weapons, but this is cool. I do like the idea of a like constant.
It's kind of, especially since it was like a mummified hand or like a skeleton hand, like it slowly is turning the wielder undead.
Ooh, or if they don't make their save.
Yeah.
And after so many saves,
they start to... it literally turns you into a revenant or something like that.
What I would actually say, how about this, Cosmic? Instead of it being each day, how about this? Because it's the mummified hand, it's the ghost, it's all of these things that you've made for like the undead. Every day, the blade did not take a life. You have to make
gotta feed it. You gotta feed it.
So every day it doesn't take a life.
Yeah.
Or draw blood or do something. You have to take the DC check and you have to pay it.
You have to, every level you go up, it increases the amount of lives it needs to take. So level 1, it only has to take 1 life.
Or like half your level. Half your level in the lives. Because that could be a lot of lives every day. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I can see that.
But like either half your level or 1/10 your level in a life taken, rounded up. So it's like by 10th level, that 1/10 you'd have to wait till 10th level to take more than 1 life. But maybe that's it. Maybe it's a later in game. Now all of a sudden at 12th level, you have to start taking 2 lives. 15th level, 20th.
But I mean, that would be, and then
and that actually would be an interesting evil arc. So imagine that. Imagine up until 10th level or up until 20th level, it's only 1 life a day. But once you reach 20th level, if you still hold on, now it's 2 lives a day. But imagine every day. Like a vampire. You have to kill every day. Otherwise, you have to pay it. And then maybe it's for every constitution or every 1d4 of permanent it takes from you, it requires 2 deaths to undo it.
Oh, so you can undo it.
I would say you can, but it would take so many additional deaths.
One, goblin horde, you can get yourself back up.
Maybe, but that's the point, is you'd have to adventure for that, though.
So depending
on the campaign.
Listen, you go to Adventures Guild. Come on, hey, you got any goblins that need exterminating? Got any gnolls out here?
Let's see. He says it sounds too much like the Craven Edge in the Vox Machina show, animated Critical Role. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't watch them.
Craven Edge? No, I didn't know what that is.
But yeah, I just, because of the mummifiedness, I like the idea that it needs to get fed. Kind of like if it's gonna be cursed and take from you. That's a hell of a curse for a daily roll. I'd almost want some way. Again, still cursed though,
especially if it's low level. Hold on. I wanna.
It is early game. So I would say there has to. Yeah. I would say it would be better. Again, the way that I would approach balancing, it doesn't have to be equally balanced, but I would say some way, even if it's a detriment to the party, some way to balance out the character's negative. So he has to either do something he wouldn't be comfortable with, or just do something that, again, it's either you or them. Just, again, you have to go kill someone, you have to go draw blood, you have to sacrifice a soul to it. You would have to do, or even like a magical item. Like you could be like, it has to consume a low-level magical item once every so often, or you start taking these rolls. Like, once a month, once a week, just something. I do like the idea of it taking from you, but the other thing too is like, okay, so if it's doing that, is it, again, because it's a cursed item? Because I don't know how many people automatically assume cursed items can't be gotten rid of. Because I know for me, when I hear cursed item, one of the first like tenets of a cursed item means you can't just let it go. Like once you've taken it, attuned to it, put it on, it's on you. That's the idea of the curse. Like whatever bad thing it's going to do to you, you can't undo now. So when it comes to like a weapon like this, it's kind of that whole thing of like, so are we just assuming it is just with you? Like you can't just leave it behind. It's always going to appear on your belt now. Or did it, like when you first used it, does it like stab you and bite you and now it like knows your blood? So it knows to like use blood magic to get that from you until you can remove the, like, I'm just wondering what binds it to you once it's attuned, like what makes it to where you can't get rid of it. Because that's always one of my biggest things too, is this something that the person can get rid of? And do you want to make it to where they want to get rid of it? Or they're always like, God, I hate this thing. But
I think the ones that make you question whether you want to keep it or not should be easier to get rid of, and the struggle would be whether to get rid of it or not. And then the ones that, you know, are like that ring that just takes away from your health every day, just sucks to be you. Like those ones are ones that are going to be hard to get rid of.
Because those are more like, to me, those are more like plot point driven ones where it's like, okay, we don't have like a big campaign right now. I'm throwing this cursed item at you guys so you have something to go strive for because I'm working on like a bigger campaign kind of thing. But yeah, so yeah, that's always one of my biggest questions is when we talk about cursed items, are we just talking about it has a bad effect to it, or are we taking into account that cursed also means bound, as in you can't just leave it behind, you have to do something to appease it, to let it go of you, right? Because that would be really interesting. But I do like this idea of like a spectral katana. So I can't wait for next week. We'll dive into like what he has already built for it.
Okay.
And that'll give us some time to think of like what you can do with like a will-o'-the-wisp like addition.
Right.
That would be really fucking cool. Ooh, what if, because you were saying, I don't want to get into it too much, but you were saying that will-o'-the-wisp like take life force. What if like essentially you get all of these that just accumulate, but essentially what if they could be for 1d4 hit points each, so you just give up 1d4 hit points, and then you could like use them as like, you basically summon them into battle as like an ally, but you have to like use your, or however many hit points you give is how many hit points you'll get. So it's like I'm gonna summon, you know, I'm level 5, so I have 10. I'm gonna bring out 6. These 3 are gonna have 1 hit point each, but these 3 are going to have 5 hit points each. So that's 18 hit points I'm taking off of myself.
Right.
So I'm just sacrificing 18 hit points, just not permanent hit points, but I am removing 18 hit points, giving it to these willows, and those hit points wouldn't be able to be regained
heal them until they're gone. Yeah.
But they won't, once they die, you don't get them back. You just can't heal those.
You can't heal back once. Yeah.
So yeah, so many different things. Will-o'-the-wisp are cool. I've always wanted to play more with them. So let's go back to this other item. Let's see here.
So I was thinking about that.
So you get blinded. You get this item, you attune, you get blinded, and if we're going to take it the current effect, you can throw it and do anti-magic shield. I think out of the gate, one change that I've thought of that I would like to modify for the ranged is when anti-magic field exists, anything inside of it you can see perfectly. Because again, if you have this blinded effect, so far the ranged effect doesn't really connect to you being blinded.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine you get disadvantage, but imagine once you activate it, any creature in that anti-magic shield is perfectly visible to you.
So I also imagine it kind of like, you know, like you inside that field, like you're like extending your senses almost, you know, like you have like the ability to like.
Actually, you know what it reminds me of is what I'm thinking of is from Bleach, the Bankai from, I can't remember his name, but it was the black samurai. It was
that freaking
he was the Soul Reaper,
dude. Yeah.
Where he was blind, and his Bankai was the dark bubble that he would surround him and his opponents in because he's blind.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, he would. Was that him? Yeah, I think that was him, right? Wasn't he? Yeah, he was the one because the other guy didn't have a Bankai. His sword was just dead. But I just remember he was able to like. encompass him and his opponent in a sphere of just perfect darkness and perfect silence. So he was able to hear every tiny hair movement of his enemy, and he's in equal ground now because he can't see either.
Just wrecked.
And I just remember that moment, and that's kind of what I'm thinking about here is if you're going to be blind the whole time and you're going to have disadvantage at throwing this at your enemy, what's the point? Like, that's almost like basically saying who's going to tell you that you need to do the anti-magic shield at that point, because you can't see very far with a thermal. You can't see details. You don't know if they're wearing magical items. So my thing is, if you already have somewhat of a disadvantage there, and because it's a cursed item, I'm not saying that it needs to like balance you out, like say give you magical senses to where while you're holding it you can sense magical items. That would be more of a different type of weapon.
Yeah.
But the ability to say if you're going to throw it, have disadvantage, but then you activate it because you still don't know technically how good you did at hitting it. But that idea of any creature inside that bubble, just it go like your vision in that bubble, like you have all of like the normal thermal vision everywhere else, but then this bubble appears and it's like normal vision. Like that sphere,
that's what you're saying.
That sphere literally, like, so you just activate it and you're like, that sphere right there, everything in that 10-foot sphere, perfectly visible as normal sight to me. I can take out my bow and just tag it. Like, the idea would be because it's arranged, what benefit does it give you? Especially if you're blind.
Right.
So my whole thing is, yeah, if it's going to do that, the one balancing I would do to make the ranged make sense with the curse is to say that if they're in the bubble, you can see them normally. Now, does that help you? I don't know. Do you have another ranged weapon? Do you have to walk into the bubble and, you know, do all... I don't know, but the idea of allowing that bubble to slightly overcome the blindness makes a little bit more sense to connect it why that would be its ability. And again, that's just me because I think that they usually should make sense, right?
Okay.
For me,
so
I would try
I'm gonna throw out a... So does the character get disadvantage on melee attacks or just ranged attacks?
In this particular case, he says it's only on... You get the blindness condition, but because you do get to see, like, body heat, I don't think it has anything to do with...
So, I'm going to just real quick read the blinded
abilities,
condition.
effects. The other actions that require line of sight or a point/creature you can see have disadvantage. That's technically any fight. That's any melee attack. You have to see your enemy to melee attack, unless you have blind fighting.
Disadvantage, yeah.
So again, the only way to get rid of that is take blind fighting, and then I would allow you to undo the melee disadvantage, but it doesn't help you with range disadvantage.
Is that if you're using it as ranged?
Cosmic says the point of the infrared type vision of blindness is that if you are using it as ranged or melee with allies nearby, you can't tell friend from foe, so accidentally hitting an ally.
Got it. Okay. So with that, then I would say something to especially if you're going to use the anti-magic field with being able to see in there, I would say on a hit for the melee ability, you might be able to steal the sight of the person you hit until the end of your next turn.
Oh, so just for one round,
you
undo your blindness?
You have their blindness and they're blind instead.
Interesting. Okay.
That's staying on theme. That I think might be a very cool ability that you could use. Again, it would be only effective in combat. You're still blind all the other times. You don't really know who you're talking to in regular everyday life. All you're seeing is just infrared blobs, and you have to be able to hear people differently. So, your blindness is still affecting you, but in battle, it's kind of
I'm really curious how you would do that in combat, because essentially you would just roll, like, let's say there are 4 people around you, roll 1d4, who do you hit? But then how cool would it be is, like, if that's the case, does that, again, depend on the DM, this is what I would allow. I wouldn't tell my players to do this, but I would allow it if they thought about it. Because let's say you and I are in this game group, right? And let's say you get this, like, oh, dude, look at this cool, like, new monk weapon. Oh, fuck, I'm blind. I can't tell any of you guys apart. Right? Let's just say that happened to you. My solution as a player? No worry, bro. I got you. Let's go to the local store. Let's find a very specific bell. The most unique bell we can. Make us one for every party member. Everyone get earrings. Every time we move, you hear a very, very specific bell sound.
I mean, that would suck for stealth, but that would be very cool in some combat situations.
If it were the right kind of bell, maybe. I mean, but you could even balance it that way. See, again, DM balancing. Yeah. You would give the players the ability to distinguish, but you ruin all stealth because it has to be loud enough for him to hear, within a couple feet.
Right.
But again, I would allow that because that's technically a way you could do it. You could work out a way to know where your people are. Or again, even if the players wanted to do something crazy like, oh, well,
and
we're
still add a sacrifice for sure.
Yeah. No, I totally get that.
But I think that ability could be cool, especially because if I hit a target and I can steal their sight until the end of my next turn, if I keep hitting, I can technically keep my sight, right?
Right.
So I hit you. The first hit has to be with disadvantage, right? Because if you're in melee, I can still hit you, I guess, normally.
The thing is, you don't get disadvantage. Well, see, that's the weird thing. It says disadvantage on anything that requires line of sight or point creature you can see. Technically, that's melee. Like, I don't know if it ever says that as rules is written, but technically you would assume that. But again, he's saying that it's not that you can't see people, you just can't distinguish. So maybe there isn't disadvantage, but
and that's fair. So
but but maybe it's more of a disadvantage as in there's an ally and an enemy and that side by side,
and you don't know.
You have a 50-50 chance of hitting.
And
one
so,
or the other,
like, being able to hold on to that, like hold on to your sight basically, or your enemy's sight basically, would be able to last because you do your first strike and then you get it, right?
Yeah.
And then you wait to your next turn and you still have it at the beginning of your next turn. So then either you strike that same enemy or a new enemy if that one's dead, theoretically speaking.
Right.
And then you get to steal theirs for a turn. So you're able to keep it up. It's usable, but then if you miss on your turn or if there's no enemies within range, then it goes away. And then you have to go and find and hit another target, steal their sight, and you don't want to steal your allies' sight because then they can't see,
Yeah. He is saying that the idea is the risk of friendly fire even if it doesn't hit, and he's talking about the anti-magic shield. So the anti-magic shield could end up screwing your buddies over. The problem I see with that is how do you prevent metagaming? Like, honestly, like if we're playing the game and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go throw my anti-magic thing over there. Like, bro, I'm right next to him. Oh, okay. Well, my character wouldn't know that, but no, I throw it to the guy next to, you know what I mean? Like, how do you prevent the aspect of someone metagaming to not screw over their party? Because they know, like, the character can't see where they're throwing it, but then again, how are they going to know to throw it? Like, your buddies would have to tell them, so you're kind of also not ruining, but you're kind of undoing the potential friendly fire because even though you could miss and you're saying, hey, I throw it and then I just activate it without hearing if I did it right, because then maybe it's like the DM has to do secret rolls to figure out where it lands and it doesn't tell anybody. Like there's a lot of harder ways, I think, going around trying to do that.
I do think that if the aim is to make the possibility of friendly fire, there are better ways to do it than blindness. Because like you're saying, there's a lot of ways around it using blindness, but if, say, for whatever reason, when you do it, like, there's a chance it'll activate, whether there's a ally near it or not, Say you want to just throw this polearm. You're not necessarily trying to activate it, but you want to throw this polearm at an enemy. Anytime you throw the polearm, you roll a d6. On a 5 or a 6, it activates the anti-magic field, whether there's an ally there or not, type deal.
Ooh.
Like, something like that, I feel like would be a better risk of friendly fire than just being blinded.
I mean...
Because you still have to use the command word to activate it. You still have to choose, and then you could be like, the person could just yell out loud every time, is it clear? And if they say yes, then he activates it. If they don't, he doesn't. That would easily...
You also bring up, for being a cursed item... I would almost be like, hey, it causes blindness, so you can deal with how to mitigate that as a gaming group. But I'd almost want to say, like, instead of a command word, because it's a cursed item, what if it's just on a crit? Any time you crit. Anti-match. Like, that would fucking suck. That's a cursed item. But also, you could add in, it does triple max damage on crit. So it'll triple max, but it'll also anti-magic field for an hour.
Right.
Like... But again, you want to turn it off. But again, you do want to be able to turn it off. I
think the only way to turn it off is by picking it back up again.
Oh, wait a second.
That would be interesting.
hang on a second. So I'm trying to balance out like how you want this to be useful but also detrimental to the party, right? I was almost thinking like, what if when activated is when you go blind, but then again it negates potential friendly fire. And then again, there's a lot of, I mean, if you had the perfect gaming group and you didn't have to worry about metagaming, it wouldn't be as big of a deal because you could easily do something, as in anytime there's an enemy near a player, you could do a roll. But the problem is I always want to try to balance it away from somebody, because everyone's going to try to abuse it, right? So the idea is how do you balance out the abuse of the players while also making it a valuable item, right? Like you don't want to just make it a detriment, but you don't want to make it to where it just doesn't do its job on them, right? Because again, if it's just metagaming, if all it takes is like, hey, are you next to the enemy? Okay, well, I'd throw it towards that direction. Like, you're negating that whole worrisome aspect. Okay, so it's a lance, it's cursed. I want to stick with the regular curse, so it blinds you, which makes you can't distinguish anybody. So I like the idea that instead of it, like you said, instead of it being blindness, why not say, like, I would almost even say go one more step and actually kind of homebrew it, make your own. Why not call it combat blindness? To where you can make it to where you can only see like blank images or thermal. But what if combat blindness means like whether it's in combat or maybe it's just in general, you don't recognize people. Maybe it's like literally a thing. Like I forget what the real term is, but
you can't recognize faces or whatever.
So you call it combat blindness, where in combat, if you are going to make a melee attack, you will strike randomly anyone within melee range. If you are making a ranged attack, you will strike, you can go in a direction like a cone, but anyone in that cone is a potential target. So make it, instead of it, because that way it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if you metagame it. If you're over by the enemy or you're like, oh man, I'm 10 feet away, but the enemy's this way, I'd have to do this to get you out of it, right? Like, so I'm aiming here, you're no longer in my line of sight. But if the enemy's right here, this is a whole bunch of area I could miss. But if I want to guarantee the enemy, well, it gives me a 10% chance. Like, you could say, like, a percentile roll, right? So it's like, you know, as a DM, you could say there's a percentile roll of, like, you're most likely going to get here, but you have a chance of hitting here. And anybody in that cone could be hit. So the DM would say, hey, there's 10 people in that cone. Roll D10. You're blind. You're going to toss it in that general direction. And it works kind of as you could use it as either a disadvantage, or you roll the hit and then you roll a D10, which is roll to hit is like your actual ability to throw it properly, and then the D10 is did you select the right target?
Right.
With your combat blindness.
You know how with what is it, mirror image or blur or one of those two, it's like if you have 3 images, you have to roll between X and Y to hit the real thing.
Yeah.
What if you did something like that, but with however many creatures are within X feet of whoever you want to target? So it's instead of like specifically a cone, because if it's a cone, then the player can try and like avoid certain people like you do with Fireball. Like, where can I perfectly place my Fireball?
But I think that technically falls in line with being a blind fighter, is you know your teammates are out there, you roughly know what's going on, but you can't actually, like, if you're standing next to the enemy, I don't know who's who. But I knew you were here, and I knew you ran up. So I know my teammate's the one on the left. But once you two start scuffling... So I kind of like the idea of having to do the cone. I should be able to roughly have an idea, but I still can't dictate who I'm actually going to aim at. Because again, the idea is that I know maybe you're on my left, so I want to limit who's on the left, but I can't be 100% sure you're not the guy I want to hit.
Sure.
But I should be, you know, but
I think in order to make, we'll say, the chance of hitting somebody else scarier. You know, because as a player, if I'm looking at it, I'm like, I can be confident enough. Like, if I can know the mechanics of how it's gonna work, and be like, okay, so my cone doesn't extend towards my ally. And again, this is more towards the metagaming aspect of it. If I know my ally's not in the cone, then I know there's no chance I can hit him.
True.
You know? So, but if there is somebody within 10, 15 feet of this target, I have to roll to see if my roll to hit aims for them or aims for one of these other potential targets in the area. Yeah. I just think it gives a more, I guess,
I would say that. How about that? What if we just? I even almost like the additional role play, because this curse really isn't a ton of role play. Like, I mean, it's roughly the same role play, but it's unique in the sense that it is like the thermal vision, which could have its boon in certain situations.
For sure.
But the blindness is really like the actual misunderstanding. You'd see a blob. I like it. I think that could be easily worked with. But I kind of equally like the idea that upon attunement, you lose all recognition. Just the idea of face blindness. You cannot tell any entity apart.
I really do like that.
And it's truthfully, it's almost like amnesia of facial recognition from that moment forward. Your party.
It's like how I am with names. The second someone tells me your name, I've already forgotten it. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I'm not saying that I think it should change away from the blindness. I think that has merit. I think the idea of also giving people thermal vision to some extent has some gameplay value, and I think that also works with the curse. I just also think that you could play with this idea of, if you took away their ability to recognize, that could also lead them into that encounter gameplay of, I don't know who to attack. Right. So if you're in a combat and you say, I want a melee attack, and you got a buddy to your left, a buddy to your right, and the enemy in front of you, well, you're just kind of swinging, and in the combat thing, you're just, you're next to me. And it's that whole, like, now granted, it's hard, some people could argue, but I knew that my enemy, my buddies were left and right of me. And then again, you can always make more and more complicated mechanics behind it. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like it's harder to explain using the thermal vision. It might be harder to explain why you're getting those disadvantages and how to stop the metagaming. Whereas if you do facial recognition blindness, where they just can't, not only is that role play appropriate, especially if you're in a campaign for like a huge important person, and you walk up and they're like, report. And you're like, who the fuck are you, man? Report on what? And you're like, I'm the king. Like, oh, my bad. I don't recognize. You know what I mean? Like, there could just be so, oh my God, imagine a cleric not being able to recognize their god. Just so many things that you could do. Or like one of your people, has like leadership that they follow.
I will say
they can't remember their leadership's face.
From a combat perspective, and this is just hard for me because, like, I've done fighting while blind. Like, it's been, like, part of, like, my sparring training and other things like that. And so, even in situations, especially in melee combat, like, ranged combat, it is so easy to get turned and flipped around. But in melee combat, when I'm tracking somebody, when I do it, like, I can hear people's, like, feet moving and, like, which direct, like, it's easier. I wouldn't say as easy if your eyes are open, obviously, but, like, it's much easier to kind of help track where people are,
Cosmic says complicated mechanics seem to be his specialty.
Oh, for sure. But they're creative.
Oh, yeah, no.
Which is why they're beautiful.
Exactly. I'm also thinking here too, like, okay, so we want the anti-magic shield, and we want a curse that dulls your senses to a point.
I almost like the idea of the melee ability just basically inflicting your type of blindness on the enemy, so that they kind of start having to potentially hit their own allies as well.
Like a spreading curse.
Right? I mean, it only lasts for like a couple turns, like a d6 worth of turns, but still.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting concept. Oh yeah, we didn't even get into how they're going to come across it, which is kind of cool. So apparently, this thing has been left behind for like a very long time. It's like in a cave, possibly in like a tomb or an ancient ruin of like an old like goblin deity. But the idea is that it's been there so long, it was like put into the cave, and it's been there so long that stalagmites and stalactites have grown around it and encased it.
Oh, that's sick.
And like either a goblin, like a small goblin group, or some type of group has come to like start worshiping it as like a god, because it's just always been there and it emanates power. And that's like the idea of how they're going to find this. It's like it's like a worshipped thing that's just fused into the rock that's grown into it, and they have to get it out.
Oh, that's kind of cool. I like the idea of like a shaman goblin like touched it and like went blind, and even though he's not like able to wield it, he like the weapon speaks to him, and like they worship it. That's crazy.
Well, and that's the other thing too. I was trying to think of like when you think of its origin, right? Could you almost turn it into like upon attunement, you know, because it was locked in the caves, that's why you can't see. Because it's like you attune with it, and it's almost like you got, you know, those things. So in total darkness, you'd be perfect.
It's almost like you were locked in a cave for as many years as it was.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting. That'd be really interesting. Yeah, like it just basically swaps your senses. So in like total darkness, you can see almost perfect. But the more light there is, the shittier it is for you.
That would be kind of cool.
Like, yeah, just completely inverts your... like inverted vision. Like, light works 100% opposite.
Light is literally the spreading of darkness, and darkness is literally the...
So shadows to you are like flashlights? Like, in the middle of the day, someone's shadow looks like a flashlight to you.
That's freaking crazy.
Like, so just the concept of that would be so weird.
Because you know how, like, a torch, like, initially gives off, like, 20 feet of bright light and then, like, 20 feet of dim light? Would the shadow give off, like, a certain amount of bright light and then a certain amount of... Would it illuminate...
Even further out?
Would it illuminate the light, or i.e. the
or
reverse
it would just be...
light?
No, it would just be, like, everything beyond the light would be bright, and then it would just slowly darken into this, like, pit of darkness around the characters. So the characters would just be walking around in a globe of darkness, but you'd be able to see further. Well, you'd be blind if you were too close, but then...
That's so crazy.
This is a cool concept. I see why he's having struggles coming up with the melee. I'm thinking the hardest part is it depends on where you want to approach this from. I would say if you're going to make a cursed item, approach it from the curse and build from there, which is, I think, why I'm having a hard time. Because taking an item that blinds you with the intent of making it potentially difficult for you to differentiate between ally and enemy, that to me should be the dictation of what the
abilities
boons are.
Yeah.
Even if they're not great, even if they're supposed to be a really cursed item, I still think that they should be, whether or not in line in terms of like what we're talking about, like you're blind, turn them blind, or you're blind but you can see parts sometimes.
Yeah.
Or at least in line with the concept behind like the story. Like, why are you blind, and therefore what's the boon? Like, maybe if you're blind and can't see, you know, like if you can't tell people apart and you want to be able to, like, you know, hit people, like, you know, hit your own allies, like what's the opposite of that? Because I think every curse item has to have some sort of opposite, right? And an anti-magic field just doesn't feel like enough of an opposite when, again, it can also harm the team. So it's like you're already not noticing who's who. You can already hit all of your teammates. You can possibly inflict an anti-magic shield on your teammates. But you might also inflict an anti-magic shield on the enemy. That's where I feel like it doesn't have the balance. It's a lot of bad stuff. It's not terrible, but it doesn't really feel like... Again, why would you want to keep it? Once you have it, anti-magic shield doesn't, like, especially if you can't really aim it, it's like I would rather go relieve this curse and just leave the item behind. Like, once I could remove that curse, because we've talked about this before about making magical or cursed items. It always comes down to, do you want them to keep it or do you want them to get rid of it? Because what's the purpose? Like, to me, I always like to make it a hard choice. I prefer a hard choice. I don't like giving people an item that's an obvious get it rid of, unless it's supposed to be for like a
unless
plot.
That's what it's for. Yeah.
Yeah, unless it's supposed to drive a plot home. But otherwise, I love putting people through that torment of, God, this sucks. But
I really think that, you know, that's a huge part of what that means to going through the story and trying to like figure out like what do you want out of it, like what do you like, if you come across this, what's more important, like power or being able to air quotes be whole. Some paladin might think his sight is too glorious, especially if he's the paladin of some light deity or something like that. It'd be like, no way I would give this up,
Right.
And while it might be technically an easy choice for one person, somebody else might be like, maybe the power of what you could do. Like, I for whatever reason, when you guys were describing the origin of it, where it's at, I think of some entity that created this a long time ago, who not only maybe it was darkness because you've been in this cave, but also because he didn't know who friend or foe was, because he got betrayed too many times, and over and over again,
it's cursed because of his mindset.
Who is his friend and who is his foe, so all the people around him look like enemies. And so like that could be something like, not only do you have like face blindness, but like your allies will just come up with like these demonic faces and they just like look like enemies and you're almost compelled to attack them, or just something crazy like that. Like that's kind of what runs through my mind when I hear about like concepts and ideas like this.
I think it's so worth playing with. I think there's a lot of directions that this item could go with. I wanna play with this a little bit more. I think we should revisit this next Monday. I think we should come full circle back on this with Cosmic's other item, that katana.
Okay.
Because I want more time to think about this. I think that this could be done really well. I think the idea of having a ranged and a melee effect with this item could be done. I want some more time to think about it, because I want to try to work with what we've been given, right? I want to work with this idea that the curse essentially inflicts you, and the infliction could harm your teammate in combat. That's kind of, instead of blindness, I'm just going with the curse will make it to where you could possibly harm your teammates in battle, and we want a potentially anti-magic shield like ranged option. That's where I'm going to keep it with, and I'm going to see if I can build off of anything else to just give Cosmic some more insight, because I'm sure by the time next week you could have it already written up and finished.
Right.
But I want to keep going on this idea, because these are really fun, unique ideas, right? When you have something like that, how do you work on it? And again, that's kind of like a good the good topic that I wanted to talk about a little bit, is just the idea of balancing, because Cosmic made a good point. Balancing too specifically and too evenly could easily lead to predictive combat or predictive usages. I mean, we've all seen those, it's like we the min-maxing of certain character builds always come with certain, spells, right? And it's just, we don't want that. And I don't want that in a curse item specifically. I might want that in a boosted power-up item or a divine item or some magical option. But when it comes to a curse item, like I said, my approach is always making it a difficult choice to get rid of. But I like the curse to tell the story, and the boon,
I like that a lot,
to make it livable. Like, the boon is there to make it worth it, to basically make it worth being in the game, right? Because again, I don't like the idea of just giving someone something to say, well, get shit on. Like, it's just it's a shitty way to be a DM, because there's better ways to do it.
I mean, to be honest, like, this weapon existed, like, somebody found a reason to use this weapon in the first place. Like, it was, even though it's cursed, like, the person who probably originally had it or originally created didn't think it was cursed. Or the
curse is a unintended side effect
of how that person developed.
And it could have been directly created for being cursed. But then again, even from that point of view, right? So whether it was the person used it first and saw past the curse, or it was the curse was the story and then the boon is the reason why it makes sense to use it, or it's lost my train of thought. Or the curse is there to entice you, right?
Yeah.
The curse is either there as the selling, or the boon is there to sell you on it first to get the curse on you, or it's there to mechanically make it worth using in game. Like, there has to be some sort of balance. Or again, it's there to tell a deeper story and make more sense of why it's not cursed. And no, that's a really good idea too about whether or not like it's cursed because of the situation that happened, or the story is that someone came, it's always existed and someone just came across it and used it for a different purpose. I always like curses to be either deity created for their purposes, or situational, like it was a great warrior's like again a great warrior who ascended to godhood but got backstabbed so many times that over the years everybody looked like an enemy to him and he could never tell. And as he died, that mindset was imbued in this weapon, lost to the scent, like all of that. Like I really think that I think the curse part should tell the story. The boon is the filler. It's either the enticement of why to take it or the reason to hold on to it, but the curse should be part of the story. So this one, like you said, that blindness, it was maybe a monk came down here in solitude. He just wanted to tell the world, like, no, silence and darkness are now my guiding principles, and he died in here. And this was like someone set this up, and that's where he was buried. And then over the years, his mindset of coming here, and maybe for years, maybe people came here like the Buddha and prayed to him in solitude, and it just kept infusing this mindset of
that's crazy.
Of neutrality and blindness to the world, because monks came here to be blind to good and evil. Maybe it's that whole concept, and so it's now just so powerful that whoever attunes with it, it inflicts its own mindset onto you, right? These are the things that I like, and then you just use that boon to make it make more sense and to make it work. But that's the way I approach the balance, because it doesn't have to mean that you undo what it does,
right?
But
exactly.
you have to make it worth your time and the player's time. Otherwise, again, just give them a ring that lowers their life and tell them they have to spend the next 3 gaming sessions removing that. Like, just do that if that's what you want to do. But if you want to, I think it's so much fun to make them question a cursed item. Like, once they know it's cursed, it's always great when they're just like,
but I could do so many cool things. And you know what? Like, especially because depending on your party composition, like, you could use certain aspects of that to your advantage. Like, because if you had, like, because the way it describes the anti-magic field is it's legit a fog.
Yeah, right? It's not even invisible. It's specifically visible, too.
Yeah, and so, like, if you, like, trap somebody in there and you have a monk on your team... Like, okay, say if you didn't have a monk, and like everybody needs to be able to see the target to hit it. But if you have a monk with blind fighting, they can just like roll up in there and just be like, nah, bro, I don't even care. I don't need to see you. I don't need nothing. I can just wreck your life, and my key doesn't get affected by it.
Wait a minute.
Game over, bro. Wait a minute. Game over, bro.
Hold on. No, what's it called? What's the ability that you can snatch?
Deflect missiles.
Deflect. Hang on a second. I gotta look at this real quick. You can use your reaction to deflect or catch a missile when you are hit by a ranged weapon attack. Blah blah blah. Your attack is reduced. One at least if you catch the missile in any way. Blah blah blah. What the weapon? Regardless of which efficiency, this missile counts as a monk weapon, and the missile counts as a monk weapon for the attack, which has a normal range of 20 feet.
That's specifically if you're trying to throw it back, though.
Right. What I'm trying to say is, like,
could you throw it and then catch it?
Does D&D very specifically? What is a missile in D&D? Because imagine I'm the person with this, right?
Oh, no, that would count. A dagger? You could throw a dagger at somebody. That would count, too.
So you're fighting the BBEG, you're the monk. Mm-hmm. I'm over here, blind. And I'm like, you're fighting him, yeah? Cool. Catch. I throw it to you. You use deflect missile. So imagine the cinematic. You're fighting the BBEG, and you just go, tink, roll this around, and then from a distance, I just go, mystify.
So that could work perfectly. That
would be so fucking dope to literally throw that. You catch it because it says lands. So imagine you catch it, toss it into the ground.
You would have to negate all the damage that it would do. So like you could still catch it, but so what happens is like the roll that you do as a part of deflect missiles basically lessens the amount of damage that you would take.
Oh, but you still have to take the damage.
But unless you negate all of the damage. So
it's a 1d10 plus your strength mod plus 1d10 plus 3 or 1d12 plus 3 plus your strength mod. So you'd have to take down.
You'd have to take down a little bit. Like, and what do you have to roll to like what? How much could you potentially negate?
If you catch the missile this way, you could spend 1 Kai point to. Oh no! You reduce damages. The damage you take from the attack is reduced by 1d10 plus your Dex mod plus your monk level. Yeah, you could totally negate that damage.
Yeah.
So that would be...
And then you would just straight up catch it, and you choose whether you throw it back or not, so I can just choose not to throw it back, and now...
So again, just imagine just me throw it, you grab it, put it on the ground real quick so it lands, I just say Mystify, and then now you have a two-handed weapon that's magical.
And if that dude had Sentinel... Bro, that PBJ ain't going nowhere.
Well, and the thing is because it doesn't get affected by its own magic field, so it remains a +3 magical weapon in a anti-magical field that the monk is now wielding, that they are proficient... They're not attuned with it, so you could say that the +3 doesn't account if it's not attuned, but that's still an anti-magic field that you were still wielding a two-handed weapon with.
Bruh.
Like, I mean, again, if you needed the extra weapon, otherwise it just goes near you.
You know,
I gotta play with this more. I gotta sit down and actually think this one
really
through.
Sick.
I like this idea.
You know, it'd be really sick if somehow your monk had Misty Step, and he threw it, and the DM was nice enough to let him Misty Step and catch his own. I'm sorry. It would be so beautiful. You just like throw it right at the BBEG and then Misty Step right in front of him and be like, "All right, man, let's go." That would be dirty. That would be dirty. I would cry.
I mean, it's a super rare situation, but can you imagine someone like the BBEG is trying to get away with the fly spell?
Bruh.
Funk, no bitch. Just wait till
you hit him.
Just hit him, and then just wait a little bit longer for him to try to go away, and then you're just like, wait for it, and then just watch him drop.
Fall damage.
Oh no, there's so many cool things. So Cosmic also says the fun thing about the stalactites and stalagmites that are encompassing it is that it's wedged tight enough that like magic hands or mage hand won't work. And it requires more force than those hands can give. So you would basically have to like break it.
Go up there and grab them. Yeah.
You have to like rip it out. So it's a cool concept. I really like this concept. I think it could be worked on. I will continue to think about it, and we'll build onto that next week.
That's sick.
Okay, so I don't have a write-up for mine, so we're not gonna go over. I'll go over to this cam. Cool. So I don't have an official write-up for the item. Yeah. So let's rate this real quick. It's unfinished. So, as of right now,
asterisk next to it for unfinished.
I don't even want to give it a rating because it's unfinished. So maybe we'll wait till
next
Monday. I don't really feel like it's fair to give an unfinished item a rating.
I mean,
especially
there were a couple other items that were unfinished that I don't think we rated.
Yeah, well, either that or they were finished enough. But this one truly has a missing piece, so I don't really want to.
Okay.
I want to see it in its entirety, but I'm liking it so far.
TBD and unfinished. No worries.
Yeah, and if anything, we can at least write down this episode so we know where the first set of notes came from, and then the next one we'll find out. So if you guys don't know, this Thursday on stream, I'm going to be making the Discord for Misfit Gamer Studios, so you guys can come and chat with us a little bit more. Easier way to submit all of your items, and then we're putting together a list of everything that we've rated so far with all of my high point ratings and all of that. So we're just going to have like a leaderboard up there as well in the Discord that you guys can always check back in on. So that's what we're just chatting around right now about, just keeping track of where these things are so we can always go back and get like information if we ever want to talk about them again. Okay, so we'll quickly go over mine, and then we've actually kind of already covered the topic about like how we like to balance. I mean, we didn't dive deep into it. But yeah, I'm actually gonna go grab some water real quick for this last bit. Probably on for like another half hour or so. So I'm gonna go grab some water. You can chat with Kage a little bit, and
Sounds
then we'll get into my rings of solidarity.
Rings of solidarity. I'm very excited to see what these are. Vortex always has some very, very interesting item ideas. But Cosmic, you go hard on your items, especially with your especially with your mechanics and how creative you get with what you can do. Like it is truly inspirational where a lot of these ideas come from. But I don't know. I've been trying to work myself with how I put together different items and like how I create them / why I create them. And most of the time, as I've probably mentioned before in some of the episodes we've done in the past, most of what I create in my my world is just whatever my players want to interact with, right? So unless they desire to like actually go somewhere or do something or interact with an object or a person or whatever, like I usually don't build it out. But the second someone shows interest, like, hey, what's this person's name? Hey, what's over there? Hey, what's in this shop? I'm like, all right, well, let's put some stuff together. And personally, I really enjoy getting to create personal items for players and characters because stuff that goes well with them. But honestly, it's really hard sometimes to find things that just work and fit. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this looks like.
All right, so Rings of Solidarity, idea that I've been playing around with for a while now, and just all of this review has just been really gearing me up to finish a lot of my items. So I finally think I've hashed out how to do this one, so I wanted to kind of bring it up here, because I haven't really talked about any of mine.
Are we adding this to the list? I mean, are you going to rate your own item in high points?
No. Because, okay. I mean, if I've created something, it's already
10
in my
out of
realm.
10.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I mean, well, they're not all 10 out of 10s, but they're already here, so I don't know.
That's fair.
I mean, I would say that if I could, we don't have to write it down because I don't think it's fair for my items to be on the leaderboard with everybody else, but I'll at least give it what I honestly think it belongs as my own idea. So the Rings of Solidarity. So I'll start with how I think that I would present this to the players, because it's not something that you could find. It's actually an item that you would have to earn basically via combat.
Okay.
So essentially it is a cursed item.
Similar to items. Oh wait, no. What was the other item that we're talking about that was like that?
The robe of accumulative, or the robe, like the robe of accumulative knowledge, or originally I said that as well. So this item would be on NPCs to start out with. So you can't find this anywhere else, but it would be on a pair of NPCs because it's 2 rings.
Okay.
They would be on a pair of NPCs, and then eventually defeating them, because again they're cursed items. They can't come off, so you'd have to defeat them in order to take them, and then you'd have the pair of rings. And essentially, I have it planned to where, depending on the dialogue options or depending on how the fight goes, either through taunting or through conversation, you would basically learn the in-game lore about the rings, and then we'll talk about like the actual mechanicals. The mechanics behind it. So essentially, the idea is that you will find these rings on a pair of brothers. Usually, these will be like, not so much a BBEG, but they'll either be there'll be some sort of pair that you will be adversaries. There are going to be a pair of adversaries, whether they're like the right-hand men of a BBEG, or, just like up in the ranks that you'll eventually come across, or maybe they're just running something in a town. Like, again, these are just ideas for the DMs to put them in. But the idea is that they're an adversary that you eventually have to work up towards. And the idea that it's a little cliche, but it makes more sense because it's the best. It's cliche in the way that I'm going to present it to the players, but it won't end up that way for them when they use it. It's just, this is the best way to represent it,
right,
without it getting convoluted and without it not making sense. So obviously, with the example, you go to the extreme, and then when the characters use it, when the players use it, it changes up, right?
For sure.
So I'm using an extreme cliche example, but there's reasons for it. So when you meet the brothers, you notice that one is obviously bulkier. It's basically a brains and brawn situation.
Gotcha.
You have one that is obviously the bulk. You have him in a bowler hat. He's the fridge. He's sitting there, and he's the guy who's mean mugging everybody, and he's the guy who does the action. And then you have the scrawnier, less developed one, who seems to be kind of like, the smooth talker. He's like a little bit more of the intellectual one. They don't have to be great. They don't have to be like fancy people. They could be ogres. They could be goblins. They could be humans. They could be elves. Basically any pair, that you would do. But the idea is that one's the brains, one's the brawn. Mm-hmm. Very obviously, physically personality wise, right? So you learn that they're, the smart ones, obviously, either, again, he's like just up in the ranks of some organization, or he's he's running things for better or for worse. And the idea is that you're eventually going to have them as adversaries and you're going to fight them. And obviously the fight's going to basically go how you expect. It's basically going to be taking out the brawn is usually your first target. You can have the guy, you can have the smart one be a mage, a ranged fighter, or no fighter. It kind of depends. I'm really letting this open up to, because I haven't decided when and how I would suit them in yet.
Right.
I'm thinking more of a main fighter with a non-fighter companion instead of a wizard doing ranged fight. I don't want that cliche, but the idea is that there's basically the bronze what you're worried about.
Got you.
And so you basically always want to fight the brawn. But what's interesting is no matter the situation, they always come out on top, storyline wise. You just, you can never beat my brother, right? And it's you can't get him, he's too strong for everybody, and I'm too smart. So it's always cocky. There's always this thing. So it leads up to the battle. And whether or not you choose, again, from DM's point of view, whether or not you choose to let the smaller guy in the battle for any particular point, I think he would just be more of he's always trying to be off in the background yelling commands, but you were basically having to deal with the brute.
Yeah.
And he is a fucking goddamn tank for no goddamn reason. Just flat out, no goddamn reason this guy does
we talking
not
about
die.
Stupid AC in the 30s, 40s?
He just doesn't fucking die.
Okay. You can hit him all day, but he's just
fucking attacks at him and he just won't go down. I'm even considering making this 2 or 3 encounters.
Interesting.
You get to the point to where it's half of you are dead and he's something happens and just
takes
come on,
away, and
let them bleed out. We have to go. Again, he's just too smart for this, and something's happening, and he's we're out of time. We have to. I'm not a huge fan of the Deus Ex Machina things or forcing the hands. We've had this conversation where sometimes cutscenes have to take precedence, but you've seen this. I always try to justify it, and I don't force cutscenes that I can't.
Explain.
Not that I can't explain. I think I've shown this to you. I don't force cutscenes that I can't initiate. So, you were in a combat. It was in the early on in the D&D Discord. You guys were in a combat, and the enemy was able to, on his turn, disappear. He was able to teleport away. But the whole thing was I had specifically held a spell the entire combat. That was his get out of jail free card.
Right.
But I was not going to be the DM that just allows him to use it at any time. I wasn't going to be you're about to kill him. He's going to use it as a react. I hate that bullshit. I hate when DMs are I wasn't paying attention. No, you can't kill him yet. No. He was either going to die because you guys were going to fuck him up in battle and I wouldn't have been able to use it fast enough, but I made sure to use it on his turn. Right? I always made sure it was his initiative. He was still alive. I don't do the whole this isn't the way I wanted it to go, so I'm changing the story, right?
Yeah.
So that's where this would happen, where I want it to be multiple encounters, but it has to be that very fine line of when to cut the encounter short without it feeling like it was scripted, because it kind of is, but how do you make it not scripted when it's scripted?
Yeah.
The idea is...
How does it feel organic?
Yeah, and so I want this to basically be this thing of there's this question of why can't this dude go the fuck down? And eventually you will. Eventually you'll take him down. You can, you can try to maybe go after the small guy and see if there's something going on there. Because he's always there, right? He's always around the big guy. He's always barking orders. There's something going on. And then if you get the dialogue options with them, if you want to press, if you get to the point of not just straight out combat, they'll tell you things basically their father was a once great evil, dark mage who had who was basically into all the dark powers. And, they just, again, it's kind of the cliche story, he's one of the most powerful wizards and, basically he experimented on them and he tried to make them more powerful because they didn't show magical inherency.
Right.
So, basically he experimented on them to make them more powerful. He thought that, I was too weak and he thought he was too dumb. So he would experiment on us and eventually the rings were made. Now, whether or not that slips out, whether or not you want to make them cocky and arrogant, or whether or not you have to investigate.
Yeah.
But they both basically wear identical rings on the opposite hand. So this ring and this ring, it would be the opposite hand of each other. But you would notice they wear identical rings, whether or not, again, DM choice to make them arrogant enough to point it out. But you learn through the lore that their father created these in order to make them more powerful, because he thought they weren't worthy enough. But closer towards his death, he also wanted to make sure that they would always watch out for each other. So, demented, but fatherly.
Yeah.
You know, do with that story what you wish. There's more embellishment, but I'm not going into that right now. But basically, abusive dark mage father who did this to him. So he made these rings, and he bound them together. He bound the brothers for life, is what they would say. And these, you got to be vague with these terms, right? It's like we were bound together for life.
For sure.
And with that, you know, we were each pushed towards, you know, our better ends. I became, you know, the intelligent one, and he became the fighter. So anyway, long story short, you get more of the background, you get more of the detail. Father created these items, bound these two together, hence the cursed items, and they are truly bound. So then we get into the fun part about what the rings actually are. So eventually you'll be able to kill the guys, whether you attack them both or whether you can just slog it out, right? Mm-hmm. But eventually you can kill them. Now, one of two things will happen. You either kill both of them, because you've attacked both of them.
Yes.
Or you slog it out. Because the fun part is, if you go after the little guy, like let's say you completely ignore the big guy, the little guy will take just as long to take down.
Interesting.
He will not go down either. If you take them both out, like simultaneously, like if you try to attack them both, it'll take a while, but it'll be easier to take them both out if you do it together. If you do just one of them, they'll both just take forever. If you do it together, it'll actually go a little bit quicker.
Okay.
But if you only go after one of them and you do just slug it out, eventually they both will die. And that's when you can obtain the Rings of Solidarity. So, what do the Rings of Solidarity do?
Interesting.
Well, they do three major things. They're a cursed item, so as soon as two people put them on, and this is it, as soon as two individuals put them on,
are you instantly attuned?
Yeah. The moment two individuals put them on, it's done. That is the attunement. Two people have to put them on. Doesn't have to be on the same finger. You could, as a DM, make it, but again, without having some ritual, how are you going to know to do that, right? You want to make these things basically work instantly. So, first part of the curse, the moment two individuals put them on, done. Kind of like the fusion rings in DBZ.
Yeah.
Once you put the fusion ring, the earrings in, you're fused, and that's it. Yeah. That's what these are. These, basically, you were bound together. So, you put them on, you're bound, you're cursed. What does that mean? What do the Rings of Solidarity do? Well, first and foremost, each wearer gets an instant plus 15 to their hit points, their max hit points.
Sweet. Get some resistance there, some what do you call it? So Constitution.
They each instantly get 15 boost hit points.
Okay, very nice.
Simultaneously, they now share one hit point pool.
Okay.
Period.
So if one of them started off with 90 and the other had 60, they both instantly get a 15 bump, and they combine both of those totals.
Yep.
So technically, the 15 bump is a 30 bump for their overall pool.
Yeah, that's why it's a 15 each, but it's a 30. Okay. It's a 30 HP bump to the pool, and that's it. They now share a pool. Period.
Okay.
It either takes damage, they both take damage, which explains why when the enemies are high enough level, it takes fucking forever for one of them to go down. Because if they're both level 10 enemies, and they each got 50, 60, 100 hit points, especially if one's like a big tank and the other one is like a wizard that just like, depending on what you want to make them, you could, how you want to build the enemies, you could min-max them, but that's why they have a lot of life. And that's why attacking them both would go faster, but they'll both die if you just attack one for long enough. So I've made the enemies have a big life pool because they've been that way their whole life.
So hypothetically, when you level up,
you still both level up equally,
and you still
and do your normal rolls. So
rolls.
You would get your HP rolls, I would get my HP rolls, and your HP would go up on your character sheet as normal. Mine would go up as normal, but we still max share. At the end of the day, we still share the max. We still level up normal, but the HP pool is shared. So that's one aspect. So that's
Okay.
why it's solidarity is solidarity. The mage wanted to bring his sons together. He wanted to make sure that they would always protect each other and that they were bound together. So that was number one. He made them stronger by giving them extra life, but he bound them together for life by having the same HP pool. And then it does something else. This is where the cliche part comes in. What it did to the enemies was it basically shifted. One's lost intelligence went to the other, and the one lost strength and it went to the other. But that's not what it does by default. What the Rings of Solidarity do is gives you the HP, links your HP, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're bound as long as you're cursed. But on top of that, each of you, by a series of rolls, swap 3 stat points. So you will make a d6 roll 3 times, and that'll indicate which one of your 6 stats you will give 1 point to me. I will do the same 3 rolls and give 1 point to you. So what happened to the brothers? 3 strength went, or I was like 2 strength and charisma went one way, basically. Yeah. But yeah, it was one got stronger, the other one got smarter. That was for the lore and the purpose of, again, why I went cliche. I went cliche to make it more representational.
When we're talking about points,
so like you roll a 1, a 2, and a 6. So that would be, you were going to give me a point of strength, a point of dex, and a point of charisma. You lose those, and I gain those. Then I'm going to roll. And let's say I do 1, 2, and 3. Then I give you back a strength, a dex, and a wisdom. So if it's all 3, if I give you all 3 strength, I lose 3 strength, you gain 3 strength.
Right.
But it's basically 3 random stats will be traded. And that's the idea of solidarity. So the Rings of Solidarity trade 3 stats, combine your life, and add 30 to the pool. And they're bound as long as you're cursed. So again, lift curse or a wish spell could remove it. But again, I went with the cliche, one got intelligence, one got strength, to drive home the hints about what this will do, even though it's all subtle. But once you put it on, you're like, oh, that's what happened to them. That's why one was the brawn and one was the brain. Because the dad had more control when he created them. Now they're just cursed items.
No, I see
but
that.
The whole point was to make his sons better.
I do think the idea that would be interesting. Like, just if when you put the rings on, instead of random stats, whatever your max stat is, you
goes
siphon
up
from the other person, and whatever their max stat is, they siphon from you.
And if it's equal, it's the next one down.
Yeah.
Or it could be like, you roll 3 dice randomly, 1 through 6, and decide 3 random stats. I have to give you the other 3 random. So if you rolled strength, dex, and dex twice, so you give me 1 strength and 2 dex, maybe I have to give you the opposite, like, 1 charisma and 2 wisdom. But, or, the idea would be, or maybe it is all 3. Maybe it's like 1 stat from each block. So you give me strength, dex, and wisdom, and I have to give you...
Because even if, like, say my lowest stat is, like, a 10, that's not that bad. But when it goes down 3...
Or it goes down 1 and you get a negative. Right. Well, and that's why I think the lore behind like the brothers was like one was at an 11 intelligence while the other one was at a 13. So it was like, well, drop him by 2, give it to him because now he's at 15 and now he's an 8. But he has an 11 charisma, so well he's dumb now, so drop the charisma, give it to him. And then it's like, well, you're already at only 11 strength, so let me just give all 3 strength to him.
Right.
So it's like he's already super strong. He's not going to benefit from 1 or 2 more intelligence points, but my other son is. My other son's going to get massively more intelligent. So that's the lore behind it, and that's why I wanted to go cliche, because it drives home the point more.
Yeah.
But when given to the players, I didn't want it to just be someone's going to get stronger, someone's going to get more intelligent. So I like this idea of make the roles to where, again, solidarity. You two are binding in solidarity, so you share the mindset. So the idea is that we're going to shift stats somehow. And again, it's not 100%. This is just I had the idea of the life pool, and I wanted something more.
I really like that.
And after all of these talks about these like magic items, I'm like, I like the idea of a stat swap.
Yeah.
So now that's where I'm at. I haven't perfectly said this is exactly what it is.
It's not stone yet,
but this is pretty close. And
no, I feel that.
I love it because I don't know what to do if you roll the same 3 stats I do, then what we don't
nothing
swap.
happens.
Like that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
Like I want something to happen with the stats. Like I really feel like that's a good curse to really fuck you guys over. Not just share the pool, but then swap potentially important stats or good stats.
Mm-hmm.
And I like your idea of maybe like the highest and lowest get swapped or something, so you get better at what you get better at and worse at what you get worse at.
Yeah, like way bad. Like imagine if your charisma was like, but then it got real shit and you're just like...
But yeah, so Rings of Solidarity I think are just kind of a solid item.
I kind of like that. I really do.
Because it sucks, but at the same time it's like, wait a second, so we share the same pool, so if like you just sit back and I just take all the damage, and again, it's like you share the same pool, so the question is like, well, let's say you hang back as a ranged fighter, and we tell the paladin to just sit right next to you. I want to go jump right into the battle. I can just get sitting there fucked up all day long, and the paladin's like, lay on hands, lay on hands, lay on hands.
That's crazy.
Lay on hands, lay on hands.
You can just...
Because
you don't even have to be around that, dude.
Because as the DM, you have to decide, even though you share a pool of health. So... if you have 100 points of health, that means if you're the one being attacked, you can take 100 points of damage. Once you do, we both die.
Mm-hmm.
But can I be healed if I'm not taking damage? Even though we share life, the DM question for all of you DMs out there who may want to use this idea, does that mean that because you share a life pool, does healing still work shared? Do you technically take on any damage that I take on?
So that was my question.
If you're in full health and I'm the one that's damaged...
what happens if a dude's hand gets chopped off?
I think that it comes down to... okay,
and not like to get rid of the ring. Like, say it's the other hand.
No, I get you, but physical damage does not always equate to health points. And this is where we talked about this, right?
For sure.
Because health points are not indicative of physical damage, but it's indicative of fatigue, mental awareness,
so
blood loss, all of that.
With that being said, then with that mentality, I would say that the way that these rings are connecting you, I feel like the energy in which is being healed by this healing would be able to get transferred by the same energy that connects their life force. That connects this, because like you think about it, if the damage you're taking isn't just physical, if it's like your exhaustion, if it's like how much energy and like
magical only.
What's that?
Magical only healing transfers. So you can't have like
someone
doing medicine on you.
Yeah,
you can't send someone giving you a remedy. You can't have an herbalist. So if an herbalist made a potion, that can't work. But magical spells, clerical spells, those transfer because it is beyond physical care. You're getting more than physical ailments. Mm-hmm. Like you can't heal my physical ailments. I don't have any. You're the one in combat, so there's nothing for me to physically heal from.
Yes.
But so a potion probably wouldn't work. But if it's a high enough magical level potion, if it's a touch hands, like lay on hands, magic or healing word, these are beyond the physical realm of healing, right? These are things that would inflict healing upon you so deeply it would transfer to your other person. So that would be, I think, the limit I would put on is it has to be magical forms of
something
healing.
Like, because technically I think it's either rejuvenate or regenerate can regrow lost limbs. Mm-hmm. That would still have to be cast on the actual person.
Because that's a physical... Because your physical bodies aren't attached. It's your life force. So the idea is that you could be chopped up to pieces, but you are feeding off of your brothers or your other rings life, like the will to live, right? You're just able to hold on to your consciousness and your ability to fight that much longer because you're essentially pulling off of their reserves, which is why the other person, although not physically ailed, the closer you got would also get, like, maybe if you got to, like, if you're a DM who has deficiencies as you lose life points, both should be inflicted at a certain point. Like, if you do the bloodied thing at half, they should both act bloodied. Because even though you're not taking physical damage, you should feel the exertion, right? The person not fighting would eventually be like, at one hit point, you're like, oh, don't die. Like you should be damn near fainting. Both of you guys, because the one person is basically in combat. They are exerting everything that you have. So at one hit point left, you should be like, bro, like I can't move. Like you should also feel it because you're basically being siphoned from. So there could be a lot of different fun ways to play with this, but this is why I like this idea of stat swapping and life pool sharing could be really, really fun.
Question.
And then again, depending on how you build it, you could actually like lean into that, especially if you both started doing a life build where
Thoughts
you both
to think about. Does this connection work through different planes of existence? Does it work at any distance? Does it work in, like, say if somebody's down in the 9 hells and I'm back on the material plane, or if somebody goes to the Shadowfell or whatever?
I would say that for the most part it should work, because in my lore it would have been a high enough dark mage, you know. I mean, he's obviously high enough and dark enough to do this and experiment on his own kids. So yeah, I would say that depending on the lore and who you had create this item, I would say that for the most part it extends, but maybe there's also like mortal limits. He was a mortal that created it, right? So maybe like the 9 hells is a little bit different, you know, maybe those kind of distances. But like mortal plane should be no distant. I think like anywhere in the mortal plane should be affected. And then I don't know.
Does that include different heavenly bodies?
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, I mean, you could make this part of the boon or the curse, where maybe they are connected only in the mortal plane or adjacent planes, right? So that you can go to certain planes, but not like a deity's level plane, like not like the 9 hills. Maybe
but
that's
like,
a deity level plane.
Like when you have blink, you technically go to the astral plane.
Right. So the thing is if you wanted to, you could say
where does it?
You could say you can go anywhere, right? You could say it could extend all of it. I would even consider maybe even saying as part of the curse / a boon is maybe it binds you to the point to where you can't exist on other planes. So either if you teleport one, they both teleport, or maybe if you don't teleport both, you can't teleport the other. So that could be also a boon, is they can't be removed from the plane the other one's in. But they're also locked to the plane the other one is in.
That would be kind of interesting.
So if you separate them, they can't leave the plane. They have to find each other to go out first. Or together.
that could work against you and for you. Like, say one of them's like in a lot of danger and you need to get them out, but they can't because the other person's stuck there.
Yeah.
But
also
say
in the middle of a fight, if someone tries to banish you,
that's what I'm saying. If somebody tries to cast banishment on you and be like, bro, come at, like, the big bad evil, like the paladin's got one of these rings on, and the big bad evil guy is getting fucked up by this paladin, and he's like, get the heck out of here, banishment. And he's just like, and the wizards ain't got no more counter spells, but then nah, bro. It's like, you can't.
Because you could even say, again, if you wanted this to be like a 9th level dark wizard, what if he also imbued the spell or the ring, part of the curse is time space anchor, like a version of time space anchor, so where the link is time space anchored, so wherever the two are is where the anchor is. So if they're in the prime material plane together, that's where they are. They can't willingly or unwillingly go to another plane of existence without each other. Like, they have to basically travel together. They have to go through the same portal or be affected by the same teleportation spell. So yeah, you could make that a boon for that curse, but it's also a detriment because you can't get away from each other, right? Like, you're stuck on the same. So again, if you both get teleported somewhere and then separated, neither of you are escaping. Like, that could be a whole thing, is just keep you two separated.
And again, a lot of that is going to have to come down to what the enemies know about you. So if you can keep that enough of a secret that nobody knows and it doesn't get around and people can't shoot.
Well, and then there's other questions too of, like, you can, again, this is all for the DM who wants to employ this, but at what point do you recognize your other part is taking damage? Is it always? Do you just know immediately that your pool is going down? Or do you only notice when it's half? Like, their half is down, so now you notice that your half is being taken from. Maybe it's only a quarter. Then you start to feel the fatigue effect because they're pulling too much from you. So you could really play with this curse of, when do they know? You could be more lenient on it's a connection, and so they know immediately because they share the pool. Or you do the whole, well, not until they borrow your half. or not until you're exerting yourself where you're like, something's wrong, guys. Like, I think my buddy's in attack. Like, I think he's getting fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, what point does it become obvious to you? And then what point should it also start negatively affecting you? When, what point could you not do things because your other person's too damaged? So it's really interesting.
I'd be interested to see if you could like input like if your health gets below a certain point, it's as if you're affected by a certain level of exhaustion type deal.
And that's what I'm saying is like once you get to like maybe if one person is like or again I don't know, it's fascinating.
It's like even like there are certain creatures in 5th edition like swarms, like when you get them down to half hit points, they are half as effective in combat. But I mean, granted, it's for different reasons. But the same like mentality of mechanic could occur here, especially because. So like when you think about sharing this life pool, right? Does that mean that I feel twice as invigorated as I would if I were by myself? Like before I had this connection, do I feel an emboldening of energy? Do I feel like I have a twice as big pool to draw from, or do I just feel like my overall pool is bigger?
I think I would interpret it as things feel half as effective. A punch just doesn't take as much out of you.
So it's almost like I'm resistant to a certain type of
you don't
damage.
feel better. Things just don't feel as worse. A punch feels half as effective on you, but you don't feel twice as strong. Mm-hmm. But the same punch that you got yesterday feels half as effective.
Gotcha.
So you could interpret it as, wait a second, you punched me as hard as you did yesterday. It feels like you're pulling your punch. That was the same heart. Okay, maybe I'm stronger. Like, you would interpret it as I'm stronger. I can take a harder punch. No, but it's not a harder punch you're taking. You just register it as less. That's how I would do it. But yeah, that's another fun aspect that this is probably why I haven't 100% solidified it, is it's going through all of these things now.
I like that.
I like the effects. I like the health pool. I like the stat change. I think I'm going to keep that. It's now deciding how does it look towards the players when they do this. Like, and then once you hammer all of that out, let's say they do get remove curse or a wish, and they remove it. How much fun would that be to carry around those two things and be able to slip them on to people you really don't like? Man, dude, imagine beating the crap out of like the stronger enemy or a weaker enemy, and then slipping the ring on them and somebody else, so they get the boost, but now they're sharing the hit points, but he's already low. Like, like there's so many. Or imagine once you do them, right? Check this out. Imagine you and I found out about him, we get him removed, but we hold on to him. You don't undo the curse, you just remove it from you. So then we hold on to him, right? You keep one, I keep one, and then only one of us ever wears it. Until in the middle of battle, I go down, fuck, I have 1 hit point left. Bro, put the ring on. I got full health, put the ring on. 15 health, combined health pool, let's fucking go. So you could, if you learned about it and removed it, you could hold on to them in an emergency, reactivate the curse, get a boost of health, have your buddy who's out of combat basically share their life points with you, and then you just go remove the curse later. If you knew how to remove it. You could totally turn that into an emergency lifeline.
So I'm thinking of a very different application for this. I'm thinking of this as almost a way to assassinate someone. So imagine like I gave somebody a gift of one of these rings. Somebody that I eventually want to kill or whatever.
Oh, and just off yourself?
Maybe yourself, but maybe you send, like, this might be a little evil-ish, but, imagine I get somebody to go and take a job, right? And I'm like, hey, there's a cave of goblins over here, and they need to be cleared out. But in reality, it's a dragon. And I'm like, hey, here's this ring
of protection.
It will make you a lot stronger. It'll make you be able to take a lot more than you would normally be able to take.
And then you just send them to their death, and then you just watch the DBEG just die.
You have the best alibi.
So imagine this too. Imagine this. So imagine you have a rogue in the middle of the fight, right? And imagine you do like a reverse Iron Man. The rogue's getting up. Rogue gets one little stab in, and then uses like a bonus action, right? And then BBEG swats him away, little pest. And then he looks at you, fucking paladin. And then he does like shatter or command word kill. And right as you're like, okay, fine, I use my reaction, slip. And then he tries to command him to
just
kill
sacrifice yourself. Yes, that
because
would be
imagine
sick.
the rogue does the reverse Iron Man where he goes to stab him but misses, but in reality he slips a ring onto the dude. And then you go, fine, right before the big bad death word kill, you just slip that on. He kills you and you both go down.
Or imagine you somehow you slip it on the big bad evil guy and he doesn't realize it or whatever. He doesn't think it's that big.
Oh my god,
deal.
you infiltrate,
and then he attacks you while you have one of his minions, and he's like, I don't care about him. He's a freaking minion.
Did you
just slap the ring on his minion and he uses him as a freaking human shield.
Imagine you infiltrate his people and then like you know where he keeps all of his stuff and you just slip it into his like thing of rings, his morning, you know. So every day, you know, he's gonna put on his rings every day. Yep. He might not recognize the extra one that's in there. He just puts it on. They're all magical. He's like, yeah, that's another one of my magical rings, and then he just. Man, like there's so many cool ways. Like I didn't even think about that, but being able to use it as a weapon eventually, like,
that's kind of sick. And then they're both dead. Just go collect the rings.
And then and once you collect the rings and then raise your paladin, everything's good. Your paladin's back and everything's normal.
Yeah, what's a 300 gold diamond for some revivify when the big bad evil guy's dead?
And you have his whole horde here, you know, like you have everything. Like, like I said, I think it's a really cool item. I think it does. I think it adds enough controversy to, because again, once if you give this to the wrong players and you basically once they put them on, be like, okay, this just happened, change stats. You might have some players who are like, oh, fuck no, we're undoing this now. You're not fucking with my bit. Like, you might have some players that is now their deal. Get this thing off me.
Oh yeah.
But then you have other players like us where we're like, I didn't really want to lose that wisdom point, but what can we do with this? Like, you know, and then of course you have the thing where once they come off, now you have a big question, DMs. Did you keep track of what stats they swapped, and did the stats unswap, or once the curse is lifted, did the stats stay permanent? Like, are the stats swaps permanent, but the life pool, because you kept your character sheet normal, so you know how much life you've had. So it's not a pool anymore. You just lose the plus 15, each of you.
For sure.
But would the stats reverse? I think they should. But for you DMs out there, you could always say the stats would stay, you know, maybe after a certain amount of time. But yeah, no, it's a cool item.
Now, I'd be very interested what the switching of stats feels like. Because when you think about it, like, hey, I just lost 2 points in charisma. Or, hey, I just lost 2 points in strength. Like, that's probably like fairly significant change to like my being, you know?
Oh yeah, I think so.
You know,
I think you could do a lot of fun roleplay with that. Like they just have to get used to their new stats and like things feel like the charisma drop would just be like you just can't find the words, and once you say something, you're just like, even you just don't think it sounded good. Like you just realize you don't have the tongue that you used to, or you know, like maybe in the morning your shirt feels like for the strength. It's like, yeah, your shirt feels a little loose. Your armor, you have to actually tighten one more knot on your armor now than you ever did before. Like, you know, you have the one that's worn out, like the little like strap little hole that's worn out in the buckle, and you're like, nope, you got to go one beyond that.
It's about to break. Oh, no, I'm okay.
Yeah, so it's like you could do things like that where like little, like you just make them notice little changes. But yeah, just I think that's a really cool idea. I like this idea of a shared stat pool and having to swap stats, and in general that again, it just brings out so many interesting concepts of what that could do, you know?
Right.
And again, in the right hands, it could be very overpowered, but in the wrong hands, it could just be hilarious to watch.
I think regardless, it's going to be freaking hilarious.
Dude, can you imagine a one-shot where, like, at the very beginning, all like the players are given like all of their setup equipment and everyone's given a ring and no one's told what it is. They just obviously put them on. And then it's not till later down the road they feel that you finally reveal they all share one hit pool.
Bro.
Like, these people realize, like, no one ever goes down. Like, bro, no one ever goes to zero.
Imagine that was, like, the premise for a party.
That's what I'm saying. Like a one-shot. Like, the whole one-shot is they're learning that when they started the game, they all got the stuff, and they all put a ring on and didn't think about it.
Bro.
Like, they were told, hey, this ring is just to identify you, and they all put it on, and then later down the road, they're like, someone finally gets to 0 hit points, and he goes, boom, he hits you for 18. It's like, oh, that drops me to 0. You're at 1. No. I only had 17. You're at 1. Okay. Someone else like, oh, I got 5 hit points. How much? 12 damage. Oh, I'm at 0. You're at 1. No, I only had 5 hit points. I should be at Nick. You're at 1. I'm still up? Yeah. So all of a sudden, everyone's at 1 hit point, and they're like, bro, why aren't we going down? But you're just over here just keeping the whole tally.
You still have some hit points left. You'll be all right.
Because that's the idea is like, and that's a hard thing for the DM to do. You'd have to keep track of where everyone individually is versus like where the pool is.
Well, technically, the DM just has to track the pool, and everybody else just has 1 until the pool's gone.
But the thing is like, let's say, like out of a party of 4, if everyone else has 1, and then one guy has 15, and one of the ones gets damaged for 5, you technically have to take it from the guy with 15.
But all I would do as the DM is have 1 hit pool, and that's the total number of hit points. And so they're keeping track of how much health they personally have. And so when they're down at 0, you're just at 1. Like, I don't care what you actually have. You're just at 1 until this entire hit pool.
That's true. Because even though he thinks he's at 15, you know that he's only at 10.
Exactly.
Doesn't really matter. Yeah. It would be a little bit harder for the DM
It would definitely be weird.
But it would be fun to have them come into that knowledge of, wait. So we don't die because it's... And then imagine that. Then the rest of the one shot is, yeah, guys, 1 dies, you all die. Like, the idea technically comes down to it where you all can't... None of you can die without the others. But if one of you were to take enough damage for the whole party, that's it.
Okay, so power word kill.
I think that negates hit points. As in, it goes beyond hit. Like, power word kill isn't about hit points.
It is very much about... Well, the spell says... If you have less than 100 hit points, you die.
Right, but I don't... It doesn't take your hit points away.
No.
It says you die.
No.
So I would say that person dies, but the pool of hit points is unaffected. So if the pool is under 100, the target can die. But that's the funny part.
So power kill is the only way to kill one of them.
Yes. I would say that that's fine, because it would be the same thing as if you could say... Like, if you wanted, I would... be willing to accept a DM say fall damage from a cliff versus like fall damage is fall damage. Mm-hmm. Being thrown off a cliff, you die, not the party. Like, some deaths don't equate to hit point loss, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you fall off an actual cliff, you're just dead. Like, there's no need to rack up the hit points at that point. Like, you're just dead.
What about something like drowning?
Same thing. I think that you... Okay. I think that you could justify certain ways around it. Like, let's say it's a very weird, but let's say it's a non-combat situation where you're going to get decapitated or your head smashed. I don't think everyone's going to die. I think, again, because hit points aren't purely physical, I think people could die and be removed from the curse. The idea of hit point sharing is that, again, it's more... Like, again, someone couldn't just sit there and chop all your limbs off one by one. You'll bleed out.
Yeah.
You'll die. Your body will die. But the hit point is meant for the fact that as you're in combat, you can push yourself far beyond your normal limits, because essentially you're feeding off of the life force or the will to live of the other person.
Right.
But yeah, fascinating concepts. In so many ways you could divide this up. But, man, imagine how powerful this could be, like, if you made this a divine level item and not a 9th level wizard item. And then imagine being able to slip that onto or trick a deity into it.
Bro, I was just thinking...
And then just fucking put it on yourself and be like, you can never fucking kill me.
Now, when I think about that, I'm like, okay... The types of things that can remove this is like remove curse and a wish spell, which is like deity level magic. So if I slip this on deity, can they just snap their fingers and say it's gone?
Yeah, because this in particular one is, in my opinion, or in my design, was made by a 9th level wizard. So it is a mortal spell, divine power, mortal power equating to low level.
So
deity.
They would have to try hard, or they would have to give up something significant to remove
this particular one. Any deity would just. Get off me. Like, you don't even touch me. Like, they could wear it all they want. It does nothing. Mm-hmm. Like, that's... A 9th level spell would not affect deities, but it is on a mortal level as powerful as, like, godlike magic, right?
Got you.
But it isn't god magic. It's just... It's the tip of the iceberg of mortals. Or not the tip of the iceberg. It's the peak for mortals. But yeah, it would just be really, really interesting. Like, but... Because it's 9th level... Maybe a DM could say that something like a lower level fiend could use it.
Okay.
Could you imagine like ordering up a Crossroads demon or like a trickster demon, tricking them to wearing this, and then being like, "You can piss off now. I don't need you anymore." Oh, I'm sorry. You can't piss off. You're locked on the mortal plane with me now. Do you want to come and just, adventure with me?
You want to be part of my party?
Or you can just fuck off, but how many hit points do you have? A lot? That's what I thought.
Cool. Thanks, but...
Yeah, that's gonna...
See, that would be kind of sick to, like, trap somebody as, like, being...
Because, again, if you do the thing where they can't leave the mortal plane without you, they would have to bring you with them. Like... There's a lot of cool things you could do once you've learned what this thing is and you've undone it from yourself.
Now, the question is, could they just be like, screw you, you're going to be my little pet now?
They could. If they had the power and they had the ability. It depends on who you got to be careful who you trap.
That's very true.
I like this. Oh, Matt, I just thought this was cool just to do the life pool thing, but man,
there's so much.
This is why I need soundboarding. This is why I need someone in the room, because I'm able to, like, see it through so much more than when I'm just sitting here by myself in the afternoon, like, oh, that's a cool idea.
Right.
Okay, where are we at? Oh, we are at the 3-hour mark. We have succeeded.
Is that it?
I think we're good. I think we've pretty much covered a lot of what we wanted to. I think we've made some good examples of what we consider balancing and how we like to do it to make it not feel boring. We went over Cosmic's item. We went over my item. And we have next Monday set up. Cosmic has another item for us next Monday.
Very cool.
Thursday.
Are we going to re-go over some of these unfinished ones, the last two that Cosmic...
Yeah, if they get, we'll talk a little bit more about the melee option next week. So
okay.
we'll make a note about that if it hasn't been completed by Cosmic already.
Fabulous.
Thursday, I will be back on Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, for another D&D discussions where I will be developing the Discord. Might be doing some other social medias. I might also even develop the Patreon if we want to go that route.
Oh,
but essentially,
cool,
just
cool.
just all the background stuff. I might as well do that. I'm not sure how much longer Thursdays will be a stream day. I want to do 2 days a week. Thursdays are just literally my slowest days. Thursdays are just dead. Cosmic's pretty much always here though.
Cosmic's
it's like Cosmic's every single day.
Come on now.
But it would be nice to see, like, I think most of the growth I've gotten is either on Mondays or on the weekends. So as of right now, Thursdays work for me, but I may swap that out.
Rotate it.
Just because Thursdays aren't a big growth day, and it would be nice to be able to generate a little bit more audience feedback. But hey, we're working with what we got, and I'm happy.
I would say if you did Fridays, there would be occasionally days I could show up.
Fridays are just hard because I'm so sporadic when I go out of town, and
that's fair.
I will just leave Friday.
Like I said, it's.
This is just a day I know I can make, and it won't harm my normal schedule. But I'll consider that, guys. So so join me on Thursday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for all of the back-end development. That's what I'll be doing for D&D discussions. Join us every Monday, where Kage is usually here with us, where we do reviews and just talk about D&D stuff. I also do pop-up games. I'm doing a playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 right now, as well as I play Shadows of Doubt on the weekends. So if you see me live, pop in, say hi. If you want to see anything about this particular live stream, if you want to rewatch this live stream, or if you want to see any of the previous live streams, you can find everything on YouTube at MisfitGamersStudios. I record everything on there, and it's all live. All of the D&D discussions, all of the game playthroughs. They're unedited, so they are just the live streams. I'll be getting editing done later, but that's just future ideas. And we're going to continue to develop this stream. I think we're really solid on our directions. I think we have a really good idea of what we want to do and accomplish as we move forward. I do want more feedback from you guys, the audience, on what you guys like, what you dislike, what you would like to see us talk about, and what you would like to see me review. So go ahead, drop a comment on YouTube, or just hit me up in stream whenever you can. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, or great rest of your night, I should say.
Right.
Have a good start to your week. I will see you on Thursday. You got anything for him?
Deuces, my friends. Appreciate you letting me be here.
Y'all have a great rest of your week. I will see you on Thursday, and y'all take care.